Good evening, and welcome to the Council Advisory Committee CAC meeting of 8th of May 2023. This meeting is being held in chambers, and the meeting is being live streamed on the Town of Kentville YouTube channel. The most up-to-date meeting package is on the Town of Kentville website. This meeting is called to order. Have all of the councillors received and reviewed their meeting package? Does any member of council have information pertaining to a matter before this council which has not been publicly circulated? As the Council Advisory Committee, CAC, we will vote as a committee to either send business forward to the council meeting for ratification, return to staff for further information or review, or defeat the recommendation. I will remind members of council that we should continue to be mindful of our decision-making wheel to make balanced and respectful decisions while adhering to our code of conduct. This council, through policy and by motion, has adopted Robert's Rules as our rules of order. The council will be voting electronically on all motions except administrative, which will be a show of hands. Are there any conflict of interest issues that council should be aware of before the meeting commences? We have regrets from Councillor York, however, I do note that we have quorum. We have been provided with a proposed agenda. I have one deletion for this agenda. And that is the minute approval at 3B for the special council advisory. That was actually a special council meeting. So those minutes will go to the end of month council meeting. Is there anything further, CAO?
Nope.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian?
Thank you. I have one addition in camera, HR matter.
On the advice of the solicitor, that's not going to go forward tonight.
What advice? We didn't get any advice. I didn't get any advice.
Sorry, are we speaking about the matter that's to be discussed at a special council meeting following CAC?
No.
Sorry, I didn't catch what it was.
Okay, he said an HR matter.
Mine's unrelated to you're talking about the earlier email.
Okay. So, council, we have a request for an HR matter for in camera. All those in favor of adding this to the agenda? And those opposed? All right. So that will be item number
10A.
10A, HR matter.
Thank you.
Are there any further changes to the agenda? If I could have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Thank you. And second, Councillor Huntley, I saw your hand up. Thank you. All those in favor? Those opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We have one set of minutes, and that is the minutes from the April 11th, 2023.
I don't know what's going on with my computer. Sorry.
The minutes of the April 11th, 2023 CAC meeting have been distributed for approval. If there's no changes, the minutes are approved as distributed. If there are changes, the recording secretary will annotate those. All right, all good, moving on. We have two presentations this evening. Presenters will have 10 minutes to speak, followed by questions from council. And the first group is the NECEC Prom Committee.
Oh, there's the video. Okay. All right. Do you know where to press play? Okay. Good evening. My name is Kathy Boutlier. I am here tonight with and on behalf of the parents of the NECEC Prom Committee, as well as the class of 2023. We are here tonight to ask for your support in appealing the decision of Town Hall to turn down our application to hold a grad promenade on Webster Street on the evening of Saturday, June 10th from 6 to 8 p.m. To be clear, our definition of a promenade is a walk down a crowd-lined street for our graduates being watched and celebrated as they make their way to their prom at the Kentville Fire Hall. No doubt you've heard bits and pieces about this flying around. It is important to us that you hear our background and truth of the situation from our perspective, and so we begin with last summer. Candid conversations between parent Tyra McLeod and Councillor York took place regarding the idea of having a promenade on Webster Street, as was done as 2021. Councillor York liked this idea and understandably thought it was something that should easily be put together, given we were starting early. She said we should connect in January, which she did, and shortly thereafter, a parent prom committee was struck and a subcommittee to organize this part of the evening was formed. Conversations via email began with this subcommittee and Community Economic Development Coordinator Lindsay Young, as well as Councillor York, although Councillor York was removed from the thread by Ms. Young early on, as this was said to be an operational issue and not a council concern. Additional subcommittee parents, Rosalind Gillen and Krista Campbell, became part of the conversation, and as a courtesy, prom chair Riley Lake, a grade 11 student, was invited to attend a meeting, although the planning of this event was not a part of her role. It was made clear by her teacher advisors that she had other responsibilities, and this was not a piece that she was to take charge of. The vision of this portion of the evening begins with the students parking their cars at Miners Marsh, where they will go to have a group picture taken. They will then make a short walk to the promenade venue, which parents requested to be Webster Street, asking that it be made available from 6 to 8. Access to a power source for a sound system was requested, and it was asked that Centre Square be available for students and families to convene as grads completed their walk down Webster Street prior to attending the prom. Contact was also made by the parent group with the fire department and the police department to ensure that this event would not interfere with their work, and the overall message in return was of support of this event and no conversation of possible conflict or concern was had. To our tremendous surprise, our request, which we had through conversation, email, and officially through the application process to CAO Dan Troke, was turned down by Rachel Bedingfield, who was acting CAO at the time. Upon his return, our appeal to her decision was denied by the CAO himself. But not only that, it was replaced with a plan as to how our event would unfold in Centre Square. What's interesting to know about this is that the plan, to our knowledge, was created by Lindsay Young, likely with the prom committee chair, as aforementioned, who did not have a role to play in this planning, and this plan was not created nor shared with the parents until last week. There was contact made by the town with the school advisors to confirm the use of Centre Square as a place to convene, but the plan to replace our event was not conveyed. We have been made aware that this new plan does include lighting, decorations, and seating, which must require a budget, and to some people that might be enticing to go with. But it was not what we were asking for on behalf of the students. It was not our vision. We do note that over the last few years, Lindsay has worked very hard to promote Centre Square as a venue for all kinds of events, and I've actually said to people in the past that she has done a great job with this and brought a lot to the town through her work. There is no doubt that she should be commended for this. However, this grad event has not been requested to be put on her docket of projects, but rather was the request for the town to support the parents and students to bring their vision to fruition, which Lindsay did do in her role in previous years. Regarding the rejection of our application, the reasons cited were the cost of overtime pay to policing that it is felt would be required, that in March of 2022 it was decided that Centre Square would be promoted for any type of event that may require street closure, and that there are apparently 4 other street closures planned around this time, although we do not know what they are. As we appeal this denied application to you in the hope that you can find a way to overturn the decision, here is what we would like for you to know and hear from our students. This current year is the first normal school year they have had since grade 8, when they were 13 and 14 years old, in the hallways of KCA and the Neckwick Middle School. It was during the grade 9 year that the world came to a grinding halt, as did their lives. Their learning went online, as you know. Their in-person connections with their friends stopped, as you know, and social distancing became the norm. There is nothing normal about youth being separated, but they did it because they had no choice. No longer did they have their sports programs or music programs, which we all know are integral parts of their growing and learning process. Yet, these kids persevered and rose to the challenges. What choice did they have but to follow the rules and mandates, even though so much of their most formative years were now canceled or limited and certainly compromised? And now here they are approaching the finish line. We're having worked so hard to get here, but yet again they are being told they need to fit into the endeavors and agendas of, in this case, the town, and cannot have one of their most special nights in the wonderful way they envision it. I will be the first to say that sometimes kids need to hear the word no, But this is not that time. This is a time that the town needs to pause for 2 hours on an endlessly silent Saturday night in June and cheer, well done you. You did it. We support you and we celebrate you. If we were asking for a car parade around town, as has been held in the past, or promenade during business hours, Monday to Saturday, or even weeknights, we could probably understand the position of the town to turn down our application for a 2-hour street closure. That's not what we're asking. We are asking for 2 hours on a Saturday night where no businesses are open. We can appreciate the want to limit street closures, but we strongly feel that this is not the time, and again, is a moment where the town must make an exception to their own focuses and goals and set their eyes on the students of this town and community and be proud of them. Let them know it. Don't fit them into a box expressing conditional praise. Celebrate them. I have worked on endeavors with the town before, organizing and chairing the committee that built the KCA playground, and I spearheaded the grad celebrations in 2020 for a socially distanced occasion. The support from the town on those 2 endeavors was incredible. We were listened to, and we worked together. We couldn't have asked for more. So what has changed? What has happened that all of a sudden the same support and desire to work together for our youth and our future is not there for 2 hours on a Saturday night? On a side note, this application appeal is an opportunity for you to engage the kids and encourage them to partake in municipal politics. A student vote was held and the majority of students voted in favor of the promenade down Webster Street. What are we telling them about using their voices and partaking in the democratic process if they count for nothing? How meaningful was the recent class visit to Chambers and the information shared about municipal politics if only a week later peers' voices aren't heard or valued? Again, if they were asking for Webster Street for a lengthy period of time or during the busy business week, then we could understand the rejection. But this truly, truly baffles us. We can't help but notice that Berwick and Wolfville are so proud of their grads that they shut down their main street for a grad parade, despite being their main artery and there being some eateries open in Wolfville during this time. But these communities are coming together to pause and celebrate their kids. Are we of the understanding that Kentfield does not hold their youth in the same esteem? In 2020, we, the parents in town, worked together to organize the socially distanced grad celebrations, and there was incredible feedback from town hall, town councillors, and citizens of Kentville. It's been said for a long time that people miss having a high school in town, people miss the youth. In 2020, we brought them back, and people were thrilled, feeling that void filled. There was a new calling for a new tradition. This is an occasion that brings people together, and by that we don't mean just parents, but rather residents of the town and county. Approximately 1,000 people, including the grads, were in attendance of this event in 2021, including people not even linked to the grads because the event was such a celebration. This also included the residents of Kings Riverside Court who walked a little ways down the street to see the grads at their finest. And in 2020, they also came outside to wave at the grads driving by. Again, I repeat, we are baffled that these really positive spin-offs from a grad promenade are not even being considered, from what we can tell, and has been our experience in corresponding with town hall departments. As mentioned before, an issue of concern from CAO Troke has been said to be the cost of paying police officers to help with the safety aspects of the promenade. I can't help but to point out that there is over $1 million budget surplus this year, in which case providing policing shouldn't interfere with any other costs nor be needed from grant monies that the town regularly has available. This presentation is not intended to be a pity party for the grads, should it be taken that way, but rather a host of reasons given as to why your support in making our appeal is the right thing to do. We voted for you. We put faith in you as our elected town office that you would see what is best for the town, its youth, and act on it. Is closing Webster Street on a Saturday night so crucial to town operations that you aren't able to support and celebrate our youth? We think not. We hope that this presentation has given you a clear understanding of our vision, goal, efforts, and our bewilderment around the rejection. As I conclude, I'd like to read you a brief excerpt from the town website. The Kentville Planning Department works with our elected officials and with the residents of the community to lead the planning process. Councillor Savage, you are a tremendous supporter and help with the prom cruise in 2020, and your commitment to youth is clear. Councillor York, who is absent, was in attendance in 2021 at the grad promenade on Webster Street and said many times how lovely an evening it was. Councillor Zabian, you were there with your little girls. We had a quick chat about what a wonderful event it was. Mayor Snow, the same can be said for you and I, and since then we have talked about how other communities have followed our lead in celebrating and displaying their grads. Councillor Maxwell, I recall you being a strong supporter in 2020, and we know your passion for youth. Councillor Huntley, we know your passion for youth and prom and feel certain that you are one who would be inclined to parade our youth all decked out. And Councillor Gerard, you have children, and we feel confident that when their grad years come, you will be eager to see the town stand behind them and applaud their success. With this all in mind, and all that has been said tonight, please support our appeal of the decision to not allow a promenade on Webster Street. Support our youth. Help them believe in the democratic process, feel celebrated and proud to call Kentville home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Questions?
Okay, are there any questions from council to our guest? Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Thank you, Kathy. I don't have any questions. I just want to say that was a great speech, and I 100% support all the students, and I want to thank the students and the parents for coming tonight. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Maxwell?
Thank you, Kathy, for that presentation. It was amazing, and yes, I do support the youth in town. I always have, and I always will. I have one question, and that is if you have rain plans.
If we have rain plans?
Yes.
No, it is a rain or shine event.
So
No
they're
backup
going
plan is
anyway.
needed.
Okay.
Bring your umbrellas.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. Hi, Kathy. Thanks
Hi.
for your presentation. So in terms of the planning piece around it, I know you talk about it being from 6 until 8, which I understand the businesses would pretty much be closed other than restaurants and things like that.
On Webster Street, yeah.
Yes, sure.
Yeah.
Is there a thought around the planning piece beforehand, like the preparation that would be required for that, or how that's going to work, or was there
That
any
may fall to
discussion
you,
around
Krista. Yeah, that would fall more to Krista.
that? Okay, thank you.
Hi, I'm Krista Campbell, one of the parent committee members. The planning with that, we made our request and tried to be, to meet the needs of the town, to not be as disruptive as possible. So we feel for the promenade, there's very little setup that we feel that would be as a disruption. We could have barricades ready to go, there's just a carpet to roll up. We could have everything ready to go so that as soon as we have the street closure, we have a very extensive volunteer base as well that we could make it happen, and then we'd have kids in and parents and community members into Center Square, but we would have some time. I think that the town has agreed to let us have set up in Center Square. So we're really just looking from that 6 to 8 window that we could make it happen. You give us 2 hours and we'll make it happen.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you.
Are there any further questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our next presentation is Clean Nova Scotia, Electric Vehicle Infrastructure and Efficiency. And I hear you're leaving that nice Lightning for us as a town vehicle for the next few days.
You know, it's not my vehicle or my project's vehicle, so you are welcome
All right.
to assert any sort of, claim over that. It is in the town, so
And I don't need a key, so I just have to push a button, right?
that's right.
Okay,
So, very simple.
all right.
Thank you for having me. My name is Colin Robar. I am with NextRide, which is an electric vehicle engagement program put on by the Clean Foundation. So NextRide's goal is to provide education and engagement opportunities for the general public, for municipalities, private corporations to understand the transition to electric transportation. And the Clean Foundation is an environmental nonprofit that has been working in Nova Scotia for decades. They work for environmental action through social equity, so creating job opportunities and in the new clean economy, and trying to promote combating climate change through those types of actions. So electric vehicles fit that quite well. So why go electric? Immediately, the best argument for it is just the cost. Even though there is a high upfront cost for an electric vehicle, the lifetime cost is actually much lower. Even right now, we have electric vehicles over a typical 5-year lifespan being cheaper to own than an the equivalent gas vehicle. So you can see here the comparing a Kona electric versus a Kona gas. You can get about almost $15,000 in savings over the lifetime of the vehicle due to reduced maintenance, reduced fuel costs, and better uptime. So because there's less maintenance, the vehicles are not out for service as often, and they don't really break down because the motors are very simple. So the vehicles are just very reliable. Energy consumption is another reason to look at going electric. 1 liter of gas is equivalent energy to about 9 kilowatt hours of electricity. So when people think that an electric vehicle is cheaper to operate because electricity is cheaper than a liter of gas, 9 kilowatt hours of electricity is about equivalent to the cost of 1 liter of gas. You are just paying for the same amount of energy either way. What the vehicle does with that energy is really the telling part. So if we were to take $1.50 of gasoline and put it into a vehicle that has the typical gas efficiency for a Canadian vehicle, it's going to make it about 11 kilometers on that 1 liter of gasoline. But if you were to take 9 kilowatt hours of electricity and put that into an electric vehicle, it is going to travel about 52 kilometers on that same amount of energy. They are much more efficient. This is where a lot of the environmental benefits come from an electric vehicle. When you burn fuel in a gasoline vehicle, you're looking at wasting about 75% of that fuel in heat and in exhaust, whereas with an electric vehicle, there's only about 10% energy lost through the process of running the vehicle. So of course, if we're not wasting this energy, then we have more energy to use for other purposes, and we're also not putting all of this excess product into our atmosphere. When it comes to the lifetime emissions of an electric vehicle, it is important to look at the whole process. So if we compare a small gas car and a small electric car, right off the bat, your car production is about equivalent. There are some emission savings with an electric vehicle because you're not producing the large, dense, engine that you have to have for a gasoline vehicle. That advantage does go away once you account for battery production. The battery production does create a bit of a deficit when it comes to emissions for the vehicle. But once you start accounting for fuel production, that starts adding a lot more emissions on the gasoline vehicle side of things. Now, for fuel production, this is for the Canadian grid standard, and the Canadian grid only runs on about 20% fossil fuel. The Nova Scotia grid uses about 50%, so we do have to make a compensation for that reflected here. But then the vehicle operation is where the real savings come in. So even in Nova Scotia, a typical EV driven 20,000 kilometers a year, fueled with our electricity, it's going to generate about half of the equivalent emissions over its lifetime that a gasoline vehicle would. And the more kilometers that it's driven past that 5-year lifetime point, the more those savings will accumulate. And the typical gasoline vehicle will last about 314,000 kilometers, whereas right now the expected lifetime of an EV battery is over 600,000 kilometers. So electric vehicles do last much longer for that benefit trail to continue growing. So as I mentioned, there is a lower amount of maintenance required for electric vehicles. So when you look at the drivetrain of a typical gasoline vehicle, you're looking at over 2,000 moving parts. They all require lubrication, they all require replacement, and every one of those moving parts contributes to energy loss as the engine moves the vehicle. With an electric vehicle, you're looking at fewer than 40 moving parts, some EVs as little as 12 moving parts. So very little friction, very little damage over the lifetime of the motors. The batteries are also lasting longer and longer. So again, with this lower maintenance, that also helps with a higher uptime, particularly for municipal fleet vehicles, where you're not going to need to book time off or try to coordinate other vehicles because one of them needs to go in for a high level of servicing. You're not losing half a day of work or having an employee sitting idle. There are a lot of functional fleet benefits to an EV. They are an ideal drivetrain for idling, and especially where Kentville is one of the first no idling zones in Nova Scotia. I thought that would be of particular note for you. With an electric vehicle, if you are not pressing on the accelerator, the motor is not consuming electricity. There is some passive energy loss just for having the battery activated, powering the computer systems that are in the vehicle, but it is not the same as idling a gasoline vehicle. So of course now you can actually have a vehicle sitting, idling, providing air conditioning or providing heat depending on the outside weather, running lights to direct traffic, things like that, without actually having to worry about creating an undue amount of emissions or damaging the vehicle by idling, compared to like a gasoline vehicle, which idling will damage it over time. They are very strong in local usage. The number one concern that NextRide hears about using an electric vehicle is that they have a limited range and that they can be difficult to charge when you're doing a long road trip. But especially for a municipal fleet where you're not usually using those for road trips, that problem really isn't present. And driving them around in a local area off of highway speeds is where they actually have their highest levels of efficiency. They are the opposite of gasoline vehicles. And when they are in town, they perform best, and the highway will consume more energy. EVs now are available in a variety of body styles, so we are starting to see more utility vehicles, larger SUVs, pickup trucks, as you saw today, and even we're starting to see the heavy-duty vehicles appearing. A lot of excavating equipment is moving towards electric because of the benefits, the robustness of the drivetrain. So, depending on the need, more and more we are able to fill, more specific and niche demands that you may have with different electric vehicles. The environmental benefits, we've talked about the emissions, of course, so cutting down emissions by upwards of half. And as our grid cleans up more and more, the benefits will just continue to add up. There is no green way to produce gasoline, but we can produce clean energy. There is a reduced amount of waste compared to a gasoline vehicle. A lot of your replacement parts in a gasoline vehicle cannot be recycled. The fluids cannot be recycled. They're difficult to work with. They are hazardous. Whereas with an EV, really the only parts that need replacing are brake pads, suspension, and then at the end of life, the batteries are typically reused at this point for home storage or commercial power storage for green energy or as backups in the event of a storm instead of using a generator. So right now, the average lifespan of an EV battery, we are looking at 16 to 18 years in a vehicle, and then they can be used further in these other purposes before we need to actually take them to recycling. They do produce lower health risks. This one's actually quite personal for me. I used to be a professional driver, so I was exposed to a lot of exhaust by being out on the road all the time, a lot of noise from idling engines in traffic and my own motor. So I have tinnitus, I have cardiovascular problems that are attributed to breathing in too much exhaust, which is in track with taxi drivers, public works people, anybody who spends a lot of time in cars, they end up with all sorts of other health issues that are related to operating gasoline vehicles. These are things that we've kind of just accepted at this point, but even for me, my tinnitus symptoms actually dropped by about half 2 years after I got my EV. So they do have a lot of health benefits for us. And they often have higher safety ratings. Electric vehicles, because you're not trying to squeeze in as many parts like exhaust or a gas tank or a large dense engine, they have better crumple zones so that they can better protect people inside. Now, public charging is becoming more and more of an important target for us to try to hit in terms of acceptance broadly. EVs are accepted as, very functional and workable vehicles. So the next part is making sure that we have charging available to people readily so that they can use an EV if they do decide to switch to electric. So there are three main types of charging. The first is the level 1 charger. So a level 1 charger is actually any 15 amp wall outlet. You can charge an EV using any plug that you have access to. It is called trickle charging because it is very slow. And if you were to plug it in overnight for 10 hours to 12 hours, you are looking at about 100 kilometers of range, which the average Canadian commute is under 50 kilometers. So with access to just a level 1 plug, most people's needs would be met pretty regularly. A level 2 charger is what you would see over at the arena that you have right now. This is a faster charger that runs on the same wiring as a stove or a dryer, looking at like 30 to 40 amps. So with that, that's what we would call an overnight charge. Regardless of the state of your battery, it could be completely empty, but by the next day, when you wake up in the morning, your car will be full. Then there are level 3 chargers. These are the commercial level chargers. These would be what you'd be using on a road trip. They would add about 250 kilometers or more per hour. So these are typically, you pay for the time on these, and they can take a vehicle almost to fully charge within an hour. Many of them, the faster chargers with the faster batteries on new EVs, as quickly as 15 or 20 minutes, you can have your battery charged up again. So when you're looking at like outlaying public infrastructure, level 1 and level 2 are what we would be mostly encouraging people to look at. Level 3 chargers are prohibitively expensive, and in terms of use, they are less useful than just having more slow charging available. Most people are leaving their cars parked for much longer than they're actually operating them. They drive into town to work, they're going to be parking that for 8 hours. They go home, they're going to be parking it for 8 to 10 hours. So the vehicles are spending most of their time idle. So with access to the 15 amp plugs or level 2 charging, that's going to be making it a whole lot easier for people in apartment buildings or people who are commuting from outside of town to have access to reliable charging. When it comes to charging for the charging, free is quite common, but nominal fees in order to more control behavior than to actually recoup costs or generate a profit would be common, especially where you can set many of the smarter public chargers to have free charging for the first couple of hours and then ramp up the fees the longer that someone is present so that they're encouraged to move out of the space and have it open for other people. So that's just one way to encourage the cycling of the parking. That way you're not having to outlay, any parking enforcement for that to check how long someone has been sitting at a spot. But even then, an 8-hour charge on one of these would cost around $5. So even charging $2 an hour, you're going to be able to recoup the cost of that electricity and put something towards the capital cost of the charger. And that's just a quick introduction to where we are right now for electric vehicles. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you very much, Colin. Are there any questions with regards to what's been presented or your drive today? Looks like you're getting off easy.
Oh, well, I did get a lot of really good questions out on the test drive, so I feel like everyone probably got a little burned out right there, got everything out. So
All right, well, thank you very much, and,
thank you for having
you
us.
know, if ever you want to bring, you know, a racing car or something else here, we'll take that for a little ride as well. And if the chief is not listening for a minute, I did test out the engagement of the gas pedal that doesn't use gas, but she's got some pretty good pickup there for a pickup.
Absolutely.
Yep,
Yeah.
yes. Oh,
Sorry, I just thought of it. You had mentioned when the cars are done, they get recycled. Everything that I've read said that they've not got to the point where they can recycle these batteries. It's like taking the eggs out of a cake. Have they discovered something now where these batteries don't just sit and leach and they can actually, once their life is done, they can be recycled?
Yeah, it actually isn't as difficult as pulling out the eggs from cake. The problem right now for recycling batteries that they have is that there aren't a lot of batteries to recycle. The expectation was that for the first generation batteries in EVs that they would last about 10 years and then we would have all of these batteries becoming available to recycle rather than reuse or to redistribute. And the fact is the batteries have outlasted expectations, which has really delayed the recycling industry. So the recycling industry was getting like a good start about, 5-10 years ago, getting ready for the watershed moment, which then never really came. So that has set back recycling in terms of getting a buildup. Right now, at this point, we would have expected battery recycling facilities to be all across Canada, and it hasn't happened just because the batteries are either being purchased by companies to use them for backup batteries or to use them as I mentioned, like power management batteries within grid outlays, or even just reclaiming the batteries and putting them into other EVs that need them because their battery has died. So right now we're only seeing about 1% of EV batteries being recycled just because most of them are being reclaimed.
Is there a spot in the province that they recycle them?
Not as of yet. We don't have enough battery electric vehicles here that are being decommissioned to justify the cost. And even at this point, like there aren't really any EV batteries that are sitting around, waiting for recycling. I imagine we're going to start seeing that build up as more Nova Scotians purchase EVs. We are almost to a 10% share of the car market with EVs, even in Nova Scotia, and our limited supplies. The demand is certainly there, and it will be something that we need to handle coming up. But at this point, the batteries are so valuable that we have heard of, like, there's one company in Halifax that has been trying to grab batteries, and then they just put them in a shipping crate and sell them and make a profit that way. You may have even heard horror stories from Cape Breton of somebody who they had a very first generation Leaf and they took it to a dealership because they needed a new battery, and the dealership quoted $30,000, and it was just because the battery was difficult to get a hold of because there were no scrap batteries and it was no longer manufactured. So they gave them an outrageous quote in order to scare them away, and then eventually they did find a battery for them, but the scrapper still charged like quite a premium for it because they are just so valuable either to put into these vehicles or to move on to other purposes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
well, Colin, I'm going to say that you couldn't have had a better audience here today. High school students, they are the future, and so we'll go that way. But I have to also put the challenge out there to somebody that's a lot smarter than I am. There's got to be a way of putting a flywheel on this thing to trickle charge that battery, just to keep you going on the highway. I figure it's out there.
There are a couple of different solutions that they're working on, and we are starting to see some other things come to market where we look at EVs differently than we even look at them now, and even how we use fossil fuels with that, or how we might use hydrogen in those. So yeah, there are a lot of very interesting solutions to extending that range and making it more convenient to use.
All right, well, thank you very much, and anytime you want to bring some vehicles here, you're more than welcome.
Thank you very much.
All right, thanks. All right, we'll move on to our department reports and recommendations. The directors have provided their reports for council review, and will provide an update and receive questions from council. And the reports will be presented and are part of the record for this meeting. Only items of new business arising from the reports will be taken as motion. And CAO Troke, if you could introduce our department reports and recommendations.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So tonight, we'll be starting off as we usually do with our finance folks. So Wanda Matthews will be walking us through her report tonight.
The report that has been pre-circulated is rather brief, and that is because the end of our fiscal year is March 31st. So we do not have new reporting for the current month. We are preparing for our audit and doing many of the accounting adjustments that need to happen. And I would just highlight, as of today, we currently continue to have what we think would be a sufficient surplus to cover any anticipated year-end adjustments. So we are feeling quite optimistic about the way we might end this year. And we are working through additional budgets that need to happen for consolidation purposes. So much of the activity that we have identified in our report have come through special meetings of council. So I won't go into any of that in detail unless there are additional questions.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director? They're letting you off easy. Thank you.
This month.
All right, our next report is planning and community development, and Ms. Young will be making the presentation this evening.
Thank you, Your Worship. Good evening, Council. Happy to see you and to deliver the planning staff report for this month. Under program and operations, look, mine's not going to be as short as Wanda's, but I will just hit the highlights. I won't read it verbatim. Development permits are up this month from last month. We have 13 development permits that were issued in the month of April for a total valuation of $1,789,206.96. Activity and development permit reports are both attached for your package. Subdivision applications, we have one file that's been submitted to the Land Registry Office for final registration this month. Under tourism and marketing, our content is mostly done and out the door. There's a couple of things that I'm still working on. This year's tourism marketing campaign is called Go Big in a Small Town and focuses mainly on all of Kentville's festivals and events. There is a list of some signature dates on one of the following pages if you want to review what some of those are. We had some really great help, and I just want to say it publicly. Thank you to the students at Highbury Education Center who helped us execute our outdoor beautification, some of our outdoor beautification to activate Center Square for the start of the season. So thanks to those folks, Axel's class, and all the students who attended. We have more work planned with that group coming up, and it's always a joy to work with students because they bring such a fresh energy and a positive outlook. Budget has allowed us to sign an agreement for the delivery of an entrepreneurship program specifically for Black youth in our community. We're really excited about that one. Coming up, we're working with Black Women in Excellence to support and facilitate that. It'll run for 8 weeks this summer. Working on a couple of minor projects with King's Transit you can read about in there. We're continuing to field a high volume of inquiries and parties that are interested in relocating their business to Kentville or opening a new business in Kentville, which is amazing. It just keeps us really busy, which we're also very happy about. Hiring for VIC staff is happening this week. We have interviews later. We had our Apple Blossom Festival logistics team meeting on April 26th, and that was attended by most parties required, and we've followed up with the necessary communication with the parties who weren't able to attend. The historical Kentville video, which I know people are interested in finding out when it's coming out, I have a date about mid-June for that, so keep your eyes open, but I'll keep you updated. Under projects, for Hebrew Court, there's a number of things listed in this section, but I'll just highlight Hebrew Court, that staff and Solicitor Matart have been working together to prepare a subdivision agreement for the acceptance of the new road, which is the road that comes out onto me. And then we've listed our meetings and trainings for the month. And respectfully, that is our report for planning and development.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any questions with regards to this report? Councillor Maxwell.
Oh, thank you, Lindsay, for doing the report. I'm just wondering about the public washroom / bike shelter project. We say that we're getting an RFP ready with a mock-up of is that for somebody to design for us, or do we have an idea of what kind of design we want to use? And is that going to impact the Via Station or the home of the Heritage Society?
It shouldn't. It'll be in the vicinity that's, near that facility, but it certainly won't impact their operations. As far as the design and the build goes, we haven't issued the RFP, but we've been kind of talking about it at the committee table. Our plan right now, tentatively, is to issue the RFP for someone to design and build it. But Kirsten in-house has developed, as you said, a mock-up that kind of gives them a rough idea of what we're looking for. And it will also include a list of things that we are trying to achieve. So after the build of the building and structure itself, which is essentially the structure and some toilets, there's a lot of amenities that go with that will kind of be added after. Potentially, they won't be part of the design request. So things like bike racks and lockers and storage and water fountains and seating and all the outdoor kind of extras. And we are, I think important to note, we're receiving some funding through a COA that came through the KBC channel to cover a lot of those extras.
Okay. I'm just wondering, is it going to be located, do you think, near the Via Station, the little Via Station?
It'll be on the same street.
On the same street, okay,
Yes,
but not necessarily
towards
beside
the
it.
northeast side. I got it.
Okay, okay. So
Does that
kinda
make
not-
sense to you?
Not beside it,
Closer to the Justice Center side
yes.
of the
Oh,
street, like
yes,
kind of on
okay,
that
sort of kind
corner,
of yes, okay.
near what we colloquially call Parkboy Park.
Okay, yes.
You know what I
Yeah,
mean?
yeah, okay,
So kind of the corner of Cornwallis and Station.
okay. Because I was just thinking if it's near that little Via Station, it might be kind of nice to use a railway station type of mock-up
Oh, well, we'll put that in our notes for our
Yeah.
committee discussions,
to bring
certainly.
back that
Yeah.
heritage. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so you can look at the old railway building and see
Yeah,
what it looks
I think it'll be really complementary to the Heritage Center.
Yeah.
It's gonna create really a hub of activity over there.
Yeah.
And so people were gonna be traveling the trail through there with the new
Yeah.
connector route, and, everybody will be right there. Should be very complementary versus,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you,
You're welcome.
thanks.
Councillor Sabian.
Thank you. Thanks, Ms. Young. That's great. I'm just wondering, so this is gonna solve the problem of having no public washrooms downtown? Because I thought the intent was to try to have it closer to the retail district. I know it's not that far away, but it's kind of out of sight.
Well, we do have some washrooms downtown. We
Mhm.
don't have a fully operational 24/7 washroom, and that's
Right.
what this will hopefully help with. As for the location, there were many options that were kind of considered as part of different plans, and where the timeline got kind of changed around, it really made sense to mash it up with an existing project happening on Station Lane. It'll
Okay.
be a little more cost-effective that way. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, I guess, so that's gonna be the one that we're gonna refer to as a comfort station.
No, it's a
Or-
bike shelter mainly with
Okay.
public washrooms in
Okay.
there.
Okay.
There most likely will not be storage available over there as in
Okay.
some of the previous iterations of the comfort station plan. But we've kind of moved on to this
Okay. Thank you.
iteration.
Are there any further questions? No? All right.
Thank
Thank you very
you.
much. And our next matter is with regards to the proposed subdivision bylaw amendments. And Kirsten Duncan, our acting development officer and planning tech, will present.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Council. As my report that is part of your package this evening outlines, I'm coming forward to you this evening with a proposal to amend our subdivision bylaw in regards to where we require sidewalks. In 2002, our subdivision bylaw, our original rendition of this bylaw, outlined the provision for sidewalks on both sides of the roads for new arterial roads and on one side of the road for collector roads. and that's outlined in Appendix B, Part 2 of the subdivision bylaw. And in 2008, our bylaw was amended to remove the requirement for the sidewalks on new collector roads. Therefore, currently, our subdivision bylaw reads that it's only on new arterial roads that sidewalks are required, and it's for both sides of the roads. The active transportation plan that was prepared by Upland Planning in 2019 recommended that we change it back to the original 2002 subdivision bylaw language, which required a sidewalk on one side of the road for new collector roads. We are supportive of this recommendation and would like to move forward with the process. We would also like to amend the current provision for sidewalks on arterial roads at the same time, from requiring them on both sides of the road to just requiring them on one side of the road. Currently, just to give you some context, the only arterial road currently in the town limits of Kentville, which can be found on map 3 of our municipal planning strategy, is the Donald Hiltz and then the future extension of that. And then collector roads, we have 2 different classifications. We have major and we have minor. And some of those roads, to give you some context, are Park Street, Chester Avenue, Cornwallis, Belcher, Brooklyn, and Main Street. And then again, for minor collector, we have Acadia Drive, West Main Street, Prospect Avenue, Oakdean Avenue, etc. So in order to satisfy policy G62, public participation policy, we would have to adhere to a process that includes a public participation meeting, then first reading, and then a public hearing, and then second reading. So if you council are in agreement to begin the process, we would anticipate scheduling the public participation meeting around the 4th week of May of this year.
All right, thank you very much for that. So based on the recommendation that we have just received, a motion to council that CAC recommends first reading to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting to amend the subdivision bylaw, and further to direct the CAO to schedule a public participation meeting in advance of first reading. And this meets the criteria because, as you know, we do not need to go to council to direct the CAO. So although the first reading, we can only recommend to council, we can direct the CAO from here. So this is a two-phased motion. If someone could move that, please. Councillor Huntley, thank you. And a seconder. Councillor Maxwell, thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends first reading to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting to amend the subdivision bylaw, and further to direct the CAO to schedule a public participation meeting in advance of first reading. Is there any discussion on this matter or further questions to Kirsten? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Kirsten. So the arterial roads, they have, it's on both sides now, and you're recommending it just be on one side. One of the things that I'm gonna be bringing forward, hopefully at the next June CAC meeting, is a request for decision around, would be local roads and a sidewalk on one side of those local roads. There's been a number of citizens in town that have chatted with me about having sidewalks, and we don't have any kind of plan for that, so that's gonna be something. So I'm just thinking, so I'm just saying that, so everybody knows. But then, so on the arterial roadway, and when you talk about Donny Hiltz being that, why wouldn't we want sidewalks on both sides of it? I just need to get my head around that.
I think moving forward in the past few years, we have been looking to constructing active transportation routes. And I think that if we have a wide enough wide enough sidewalk on one side of the arterial road, then that can accommodate both pedestrians and active transportation users.
Okay.
So that's kind of where the thought process is around that.
That's helpful, thank you.
Are there any further questions? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends first reading to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting to amend the subdivision bylaw, and further, to direct the CAO to schedule a public participation meeting in advance of first reading. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kirsten. And our next is our Parks and Recreation report with Director Bedingfield.
Good evening, everyone. I was just saying that if you can hear a growl, it's my stomach. I apologize. Should have had more pretzels. You have my report in front of you. There's a few things that I wanted to highlight, specifically under the work around homelessness. I just wanted to remind Council, you should have received an email. I will forward it again. But with that event on the 25th for elected officials and senior staff and policymakers, and we're addressing it to all levels of government, that event is there. We're looking for 1 or 2 council members. I know some folks are away during that, but I'll send it out again and we can have a conversation there. And to reiterate, there will be calls to action at that meeting from what we heard from our community partners. So I think it's really important that we make sure that we show up for them. Under programs and operations, today is the very first day of summer of Sarah Darcy, I apologize, who's our summer recreation manager. So everything that's fun and cool in the summer is because of Sarah moving forward, which is really great. So if you have a chance and you're in our department, please stop by and say hi to her. Sarah and her family are new to the area and are living in Kentville right now, which is really wonderful to have her here. I wanted to highlight the Memory Cafe because that's a really special program that keeps getting some recognition out there, and that's one of the many programs that we partner on. In this case, it's with Doctors Nova Scotia and the town of Wolfville, actually, and that program is specifically focused on individuals who have memory loss and their support workers. And recently, we've also partnered with Petit Patrie, so that everyone gets really well fed and spoiled as well. And that's received a lot of recognition out there, most recently from Doctors Nova Scotia as quite an innovative program. The Memory Cafe program is actually a program that exists outside of Canada as well. We just happen to be one of the hosts in this part of the country. Under community outreach, there's a bunch of things going on there, but I wanted to bring up the Kentville Home Show. So that is the big event that we host every year in the arena, and that helps offset the operating costs for the Kentville Arena. So we're slowly building it back up after COVID, and this year, though we don't have the final numbers, what we have heard is that there were 500 more at the gate than last year. So that's a good start. So we're slowly getting back up to where we were before, which will really help offset things. Under council related, just around the Inclusion and Access Committee, so a meeting was held on April 15th. This meeting was focused on education. Again, each of those meetings has a different theme to it based on where our priorities are and requirements from the province of Nova Scotia that follow our action plan. We discussed around sidewalk accessibility, adjustments, communication during construction season, all of these things that help make this season a lot more user-friendly for folks in our community with mobility issues and varying degrees of sensory issues. You will be receiving memos from the committee pertaining to some of these topics. And then the other piece that on May 2nd we had a How to Be an Ally training. I know some people here attended that, and that was, again, part of that education series. And that's my report.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director? Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Thanks, Director Bedingfield. Just a question. Do we have any financial contribution to the home show, or they just rent the space from us and then they take it on?
So we partner with an organization that helps put it on, and then all of the net from that is based on the money that they've taken off, and the rest of it goes to us.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Organize it, yeah.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you, Director Bedingfield. Question about the sort of the change in, mostly in previous years, we've seen a lot of trades and people in that, and because trades have become so busy, did you see a difference in who was actually a vendor?
Oh, at the home show?
Yeah, sorry, yes.
Yeah, sorry. No, that's a good question, actually. I'd have to look back. That's a great question. I wish I could answer it. Yeah, I'd have to look back to see over the previous years.
Just
Who was
curious.
here? Was anybody here at the budget? No?
I think you had more trades.
Donna said we had more tradespeople.
That is true.
So
Thank you.
there we go, data in real time. There were a lot of heat pumps there. Yeah. Yes.
Councillor Huntley.
Hi, Rachel. I noticed in your note you talked about the National Mountain Biking Championships that are coming up. So I have two questions. One is, at what point will we know how many people are coming who are entering that race? And number two is, do we have any opportunities here to have an area set up for them if they're staying overnight to stay in Kemple? Because obviously we know we have no hotels, but
So the registration is open now. I think it's important to note too that the Canada Cup and the national event overcloud the rest of it. So actually on the Sunday of this multi-day event is when nationals take place, and nationals is a really big deal. But this is a 2023 championship. I don't know if you know this, but 2024 is the Olympics, so it's also an Olympic qualifier where riders are trying to get their points. It's a really big deal. We're hosting it next year as well, which is the Olympic year, so there's a lot of really good things coming out. That's happening on the Sunday, so there's a smaller number of riders that are able to qualify for the national events. On the Friday and Saturday, that is general Atlantic Canadian province opening up, and that's usually where you see the larger numbers. There's also two different events. So one is mountain biking, which you'll see through the gorge. The other one is short track, which is pretty much a party on a bike. I encourage everyone to come down and take a look. It's really awesome. With regards to, what was the other question?
I just wanted to know if there was any opportunities for areas set
Oh,
up.
lodging, that's right. So right now, we've partnered with the Old O in Acadia. They're our official kind of event partners in that. So that's where we're sending folks. They're also, for folks that are interested, we've opened up Memorial Park for camping. But that is what is available right now. I can tell you that in previous years, we've had people that haven't been able to get any lodging, and they've booked as far away as Truro.
Wow. Okay, thank you.
All right, and before you start your next report, I want to tell you that I had the opportunity to attend the Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities spring conference last week in Digby, and I had one of those I'm going to say proud mama moments where I was sitting in an audience on the last morning of the conference. And we had three mayors sitting up on the stage, and they were telling us or answering questions with regards to the opportunities and challenges in municipal work these days. There was one from a rural, one from a town, and one from a regional. The three types of municipalities that we have here in Nova Scotia. And there were 6 questions. The final question of the day was with regards to projects, and they were asked if there was a project or something happening in another municipality that they really wanted in their municipality. And I'm going to tell you right now that 2 out of 3 said Kentville Recreation. So you need to know that, and your folks need to know that. And I'm just going to say that the things that we saw in our budget, and not only from a recreation perspective, but from all of our different departments, are truly the talk when you go to these conferences. People were asking questions about Homeless No More, about the navigator that we've hired in the police department. So all of these things are hitting milestones and real big marks out there. And to you and your staff, particularly for the recreation, and to all our directors, thank you so much for the work that you do, because it's making a difference, and people really want to do what Kentville is doing. So keep up the good work.
That's great.
And I hear you got another report for us.
I do.
All right.
So you should all have this in front of you, and this is as promised. It's just a little snapshot in terms of, because I know there's a lot of decisions coming up. We're working on this regional multi-purpose facility. That decision is coming to the table at some point. But I think it's really important that that everybody has kind of a snapshot about where our current assets are in the town of Kentville. I do want to reiterate that this is a snapshot, which is why we have money in this year's budget to hire professional to be able to take a deeper look into this. In fact, as I was sitting down with staff to create this report, it's really clear that there's a lot of questions that we can't answer, but it's good to get those in place so that we make sure that as we move into that RFP that we have that there. So taking a look at this is a document to support council in making future decisions. I think the thing to note is that we're looking at both the state of the current asset, but then also the usability for our community as it exists right now, and in the future as we continue to grow. Our community shifts in terms of needs, in terms of demographics, all of those different pieces. So I have this really, I was saying to the CAO, I'm embarrassed how much time I spent on the colors of this. This took like way too long, I apologize. But you have this chart in front of you. It's a, is this the right red? Is it the right yellow? I don't know. But you have in front of you based on just kind of broad facilities. So we really wanted to focus on the arena and pool, since those tend to be the ones that get used the most, but also use the most resources in the town. And then we looked at the recreation center, green spaces, and outbuildings, really broadly speaking. So you'll see in the chart here that that we narrowed it down so that when it comes to accessibility, when it comes to functionality, all of these different things, we categorized it as green, so there's little to no investment is needed. Yellow, some investment is needed to meet the needs, and red is immediate investment is needed. So you can see under arena, in terms of accessibility, the arena does not meet accessibility standards. We've done a lot. I can tell you that we've done, thank you, that we've done a lot of work to do as much as we can in terms of bathroom usage, in terms of lighting, all of these different pieces, but it's just, it will not meet the current standards. And as we need to be at a certain standard by 2030, I think that's something for this council to keep in mind. Under energy efficiency, like I said, we've replaced a lot of the lighting. There's a lot of stuff that's gone on. We've managed to drop our power rates by a little bit, but still there is lots to do. The building is quite old. Like I said, in 1967 is when this was built, and there's only so many efficiencies that we can plug into this place. Currently, the way that we make money at this facility is through special events, facility rentals, advertising on boards. Those help us a lot. We have as many advertisements. I think there may be a little bit more space right now, but we're continually working to update those. This year, you're investing $130,000. Part of what's happening, and you'll see at the arena, is that you're having these small amounts. We did that last year as well. And that's really because we're avoiding the larger question that the future investment into just the floor and the boards of the arena that are cracked and are tilted is going to be $2,500,000 is a guesstimate right now. And that's, even with that, it still doesn't meet the current needs of the community. It's certainly not accessible. That's with the same footprint. So I'm just leaving that with you. When it comes to demand for ice rental, that's currently increasing during prime time, and we're working to continue to fill the gap during non-prime time, which is a pretty common thing with arenas across the province. The Ken Fuller Memorial Pool that was built in 1954. We've put a lot of money into this pool in terms of accessibility. We completely redid the change rooms, if you remember, a couple years ago. That was really amazing. That was done in 2019, and in fact, in 2019, if you all remember before the pandemic, that was the first year we actually had to turn people away because the pool was so popular, and it was a really phenomenal thing, but it was our first, oh, wait a second, regardless of what we do to this pool, it doesn't meet the needs of our community. But we redid the locker room so that it's fully, unisex, it's completely accessible. We have a pool lift in there. Ideally, it's zero entry. We don't have that ability to do that. Dave and I were just doing some quick math, and by Dave and I mean Dave was doing some quick math for me over in the corner in terms of how much water that pool currently leaks. And it is about 20,000 liters a day that pool leaks right now. And so every day, this is why it's so cold, because we have to put garden hose in the pool in the morning to get it up to the right level. You have money in the budget this year. We'll be doing an exploratory. We can't do that till after this pool season, otherwise the pool won't. Are you okay? Okay. Otherwise, the pool won't be able to open, and we're just acknowledging how much exploring we're going to be able to do without further damaging the pool. this is the state of the pool. When it comes to the recreation center, which used to be the old fire hall, that's really not an accessible building. You've got the upper recreation center that isn't accessible at all. You've got the lower recreation center that is kind of accessible. I think the thing to note, because we do have continued, we do have more demands in this, but what we noticed during COVID, and something that is really important to note when it comes to a gymnasium, when it comes to a place for our community to be able to do things that require high ceilings or a gym type of thing, we're very reliant on KCA school. And that is taken away from us in summer months. It's taken away from us whenever there's a health crisis like there was. It's taken away from us whenever there's a union negotiation. So it's not really reliable. Right now we have access to booking. Our department actually books the Aldershot School, KCA School, and the school out in Colebrook for gym time to make sure that there's equitable access in this region. All of those were taken away from us in COVID. It's a really, and we don't have enough gym time in terms of demand. Green spaces. We're pretty good for green spaces as it currently sits. Certainly in terms of sport fields, we don't have an over demand on those, but where we do have an overage of a demand is in our natural spaces. So we have Miners Marsh that is kind of busting at the seams, and that is a protected area. So to be able to navigate community along with like bird migration, for example, that's a really tricky thing to do, especially since we have a lot of people that want to have events there during different times of year. It is a really popular space. We've got the Gorge that is becoming increasingly popular. We're hosting these big events. We also have an invasive species that's going to wipe that out unless we're able to figure something out in the next couple, I'm going to say months actually. And then we have the Ravine that isn't owned by us, but it is on an easement, and we all know what's happening with that. We're hoping to open that soon, but that's also a little bit tricky. So what we're seeing since COVID is that our parks are actually strained. Our sport fields right now, they're okay. As we grow and expand in population, this could all change, but that's where we're at right now. So I think with the facility needs assessment that again is coming up, we're going to be able to dive into this a little bit more. It'll be both a needs assessment and a, what's the word I'm looking for? Anybody needs assessment and a feasibility study. Then we'll be able to kind of flesh out that story, but I wanted to bring that initial kind of settling to you today.
All right, thank you very much. Are there any questions for the director on this matter? Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you again, Rachel. Is there a way that we can find out what the revenues are for each different area?
The revenues are in the budget, so you can see what we project every year and what our actuals are.
Will the study be doing future or what
Future
could be
possibilities?
recognized? Yeah.
That's certainly a big question there. Yeah, absolutely. So here's an example, and thank you for that. We have an amazing film industry in this province, and when you go onto their website, they say if your facility, like an arena, wants to host a film, let us know. And we've gone on and tried to apply for it, but our facility actually doesn't meet the dimensions of it. So that's one example that's out there that our facility currently doesn't meet the need. I think when it comes to all future builds, we do need to look at that multi-use model. It just doesn't make sense otherwise, right? So that's a really important piece to take a look at it, and absolutely.
Thank you.
Councillor Sabian.
Thank you. Thanks, Director. Just wondering the future investment of the rink, the $2.5 million, how far off could you go without, you're going to say yesterday, but where do you see that? How, if things kind of stayed the way they were, when would that have to be done, or should it be done?
I think this will also come out in the study, and I have smarter people on my staff that would be able to answer that more accurately. What I do know is that there's been a crack in the arena for a long time on the floor, and I also know that it's sinking on one end of it. And so that means that the crack is getting a little bit bigger. And so the ice is kind of wonky. It just means it's a little, we just have to do different things to manage it. It's not, we'll be able to open next year, we'll be able to open in future years. It's just whether or not, whether or not we are. So for the summer months, it also means that, for example, if we wanted to run a floor hockey program in there, we can't. There's a huge crack on, it's too much liability. If we wanted to run, what else has to be in there the other day? Oh, indoor pickleball. You'll be shocked to know pickleball wants more space. There's a crack in the floor and it's too much of a liability, so trying to jig that.
Gotcha, okay.
And then also there's an understanding that if there's a crack in the floor, what's going on underneath.
Gotcha, thank you. I've already said this and I'm biased, but I would do everything I could, and I think most of us all would, if we could do something in Kentville with some kind of complex. I'd like to see it here if we can have it at home, so just gonna say that again, thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So sort of dovetail on what Councillor Zabian just said, because I know he had brought a request for decision to us about a month or so ago with respect to our own recreation complex, I'll call it that, wellness center. And I certainly won't hold you to this, but do you think what do you think about that, of us having our own? Knowing that there's gonna be a feasibility study and a needs assessment, et cetera,
Having
et
our
cetera.
own
Yeah.
multi-use complex?
Yes.
I think that I don't have an opinion on that. I think that's up to you folks to decide.
That's why I said we won't hold you to that.
I think that in this region, there are facility needs.
Okay.
And I think that we've looked at it from a needs assessment, we've looked at it from a feasibility study. I think that we have the information that, that is needed to make a decision. I think a decision just needs to be made. But I think an important thing for you folks to take into consideration, and I wanted to make sure that you had, is all the information you have about our current facilities. In this region, we are the only unit outside of Berwick, which isn't part of that feasibility study, that operates facilities.
Okay.
And so it's really important that we take note about the timing of all this and where our facilities are for the future
Exactly.
investment.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Are there any further questions for the director? All right, thank you very much. And our next report is the Kentville Police Department.
Good evening, everyone. I submitted a number of reports to the Police Commission last month for April's meeting. They're accurate as of March 31st. Do you have any questions on my reports?
Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I was just wondering, Chief, what type of municipal bylaw investigations are being looked at by the bylaw officer? I noticed you mentioned 3 of them, so I'm just kind of wondering which bylaws.
That's a good question. So the bylaw investigations have started to evolve over the last little while for sure. As you know, we started with parking enforcement and bylaw kind of evolved. So the ones that come up this time of year are usually unsightly premises. Sometimes it's animals, so it's animal control bylaw and unsightly premises, the ones that have come up. But there's ongoing discussions of the role and whether that should expand or change going forward.
Right.
But that's what he has right now, parking and unsightly premises and animal.
Okay, and I was looking at the parking charges. Are those mostly for being over the two-hour limit, or are there, the charges
The
that have
vast
come up?
majority are being over the 2-hour limit. I do know there's others that are, for example, parked past the parking lot into the street. So he'll take a tape measurement, measure how far they're over and
Right.
take a photograph.
Yep.
But the vast majority are 2-hour parking.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. And this may be a conversation for council. I know over the years we've looked at maybe possibly going to 3 hours and then we kind of stay with 2 hours. And I'm just wondering, because I hear it again from people, they come into town from outside and they want to have lunch and they end up, because you're in town anyway, so you've got an appointment, you have your lunch, and then you want to do a little shopping. 2 hours is not a lot of time for a person. And I know we don't validate, but is there anything we could look at doing or helping people? Because I know myself, if I went to town and had lunch and spent some money at a retailer and then all of a sudden I got dinged with a ticket, I mean, they leave even though it's only a nominal fee. It's just they don't feel welcome and they don't want to come back again.
So I know there's been a lot of studies on the town
Mhm.
time limits and where the parking spaces are.
Mhm.
So I can tell you there's a significant amount of free parking for sure that you can park all day long.
Right.
I'm indifferent to the time limit. If you council changes to 3 hours, we'll enforce 3 hours. Right now it's 2 hours.
Mhm.
But I do know there's been a tremendous amount of work done previous to my getting here about how many spots are available, how many hours they are,
Right.
and how many free parking spots there are. But from the time limit, you tell me what the time limit is, change the bylaw, we'll enforce it
Yeah.
to 3 hours.
I just look at it from, and I know it's a council decision if we're gonna change it, I just look at it, people don't always intend to come for 3 hours or 4 hours. Sometimes they come for that appointment to get new glasses and they're stuck there and then they leave there and then by accident they wander into a store, and it's not always, they're not always coming to abuse it. They're coming for one thing and then they end up, it's a domino effect, right? So often benefits the people, the businesses downtown. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Chief, just wondering if you can comment a little bit and around the Community Crisis Navigator. I know when I was at the Police Commission session that we had the other night, you and I chatted a little bit about that, and I think it would be nice to just get an update from you on how that's going and incidents and a few things like that.
So thankfully, and I thank the council for approving the position, so she officially started April 1st retroactively, so now it's a funded position as opposed to a grant. The position, I had met with her today actually for about an hour, talking about her role, so it's going better than expected for sure. We get referrals from officers, from the RCMP, from the schools, from other agencies now. So her workload hasn't decreased for sure. I think I'm trying to recall the presentation I did last Friday in Halifax. Like for the month of March, I think there was like 98 interactions, 13 referrals, a number of different agencies. So there's some people that take up a considerable amount of time because of their specific needs, and there's some that have a need for a moment. She puts them in touch with the right services. But it's continued to work where she's working with the non-governmental agencies and governmental agencies now on speed dial almost. Like she has a better relationship with most of them than certainly the police do from day to day. So yeah, I couldn't expect any more from her for sure.
That's great.
Very
Thank you.
pleased.
Yeah, thanks for that update.
And she makes the position. As I've said before, there's a position and there's a person. The person makes the position.
Are there any further questions for the chief? All right, Chief, thank you very much. And our next report is Engineering and Public Works.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'll start like I normally do with the Water Commission update. The Kentville Water Commission originally had a meeting scheduled for late April, which was rescheduled to this week, later on Wednesday, May 8th, so it could follow the presentation and approval of the town's operating budget. So at that meeting, we will present the operating and capital Kentville Water Commission budgets. Operationally in March, there were no issues, or I guess I should say April, there were no issues with the Water Commission. Similarly, there were no operational issues with the Kentville Sanitary Sewer Service. We will present the Sanitary Sewer Area Service operating capital budgets at next month's Council Advisory Committee in June. That's all I've been saying lately is budget, so I had a line on my report, which budgets, but it seems like we've either been meeting about them or working on them internally with staff and different directors, but it's been a very busy last couple months working on all the different budgets, with still 2 more to come with water and sewer. Under Public Works, it took a bit of in-house mechanic work and tracking down of an out-of-production radiator, but the street sweeper is back on the road. I think this is week number 3 that it's been back in service. And it's in use basically every day, either cleaning our streets and curbs or performing maintenance on various catch basins, manholes, water services, or safely excavating around lots of direct buried power and communication lines throughout town to make our work safer. I have an update on Canaan Avenue. We are awaiting a recommendation still for the design and repair and rebuild really of that section of Canaan Avenue that failed, the slope failed in mid-January. But we can expect that section of road to remain closed until at least midsummer, because we're into first the design, then the tendering, and then the actual construction of most likely a retaining wall is the just the type of wall at this point that we're waiting on the design for. So that may be sheet pile, it may be a cast-in-place concrete, or even precast concrete. So as you can remember, there's a budget line in the capital budget to repair Canaan Avenue. So until then, it will remain closed. Under Transportation and Traffic, I received notice from Nova Scotia Public Works, formerly Department of Transportation, last week that lights have been ordered for the new bridge. So everybody can cheer, I guess, with an expected installation this summer. So I think the original expectation, as I was told, they were gonna go on the bridge. I said, I don't see how they can go on the bridge. There's no real place to put them. So they're actually gonna be on the, close to the approaches, on both ends of the bridge. There'll be a light not unlike you see, I guess, say the new interchange, up on Granite Drive, up behind Sobey. So you have they're fairly tall lights with the crook. And again, not unlike what you see in most of our new subdivisions, but that stainless steel type of, or aluminum pole that has the shepherd's crook in it of sorts. But will definitely illuminate the walking and driving area on the new bridge. So that's great news. Other than that, projects, work has begun on curb and sidewalk improvements around town. We've noticed certain areas, and I've received some emails from several councillors about the replacements that have happened on different areas of town. They're working right now on the section of West, sort of the end of West Main Street where Park Street meets Main and West Main. And that's looking really, really good. And the next phases of McDonald Avenue subdivision, that rebuild, phase 2, and the active transportation network are set to start in the coming weeks. And that is my report.
Excellent, thank you very much. And we have a question, Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Thanks, Director Bell. I have a few citizens on Apple Tree Lane have been in discussion with me about some drainage issues and flooding and whatnot. And their concern is that, and this is what they've been told, and I don't know if you can give me some more information on this, but the development behind them, that they didn't take the recommendation of the engineer at the time and didn't drain the way they were supposed to. And now these people on Apple Tree are dealt with issues of flooding, and they're having to do upgrades. And I'm just wondering if there's anything you can tell us about that, or?
Nothing that I can share tonight. Did speak to one homeowner as recent as today, in fact, and I'm going to go up and see him later this week. But they're on the lower level, back on that original phase of that development behind them, Fox Hollow Drive, I guess. I'm not aware of any design that was done during the design of the subdivision of Fox Hollow behind them. So there's certainly no water coming off our street affecting properties. It is a very heavy clay area, and that the old field behind there, which is now subdivision, was an apple orchard. I don't doubt that there may have been field drainage and different field tile in there, but the conversation I had with one gentleman was about, he doesn't have standing water, but he says water does come up through the basement floor. But I haven't witnessed that, and I'm gonna see him later this week.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Director Bell, just wondering about New Minas, the smell, the sewer, the millions of dollars that have been, and I know this isn't your wheelhouse, this is a county thing, but what's it gonna take to fix it?
Millions, no. That's not a good answer.
A new system?
Yeah. They have a design this has been a multi-year, painfully long process. They desludged a couple years ago, have a contract now to upgrade the aeration equipment in those 2 primary cells. Found that there's somewhat more sludge in one of the cells than was anticipated once it was drained down, and that happens when you can't actually quantify it until the ponds are lowered. The plan now is to proceed with aeration equipment in cell 2 and repair what's in cell 1 and put things back online.
Will that happen this year?
That contract has been awarded and is happening now. That's why the first pond is drained, and they're making repairs.
Oh, so they're gonna, okay, perfect.
That's probably why there was perhaps a different smell than other years, and maybe different timing. Right now, it's the fact that the first cell is offline and drained down to mostly dewatered. It's a wet product in that lagoon, and the second cell is going to have upgrades. So everything's going around cell 1 and then through the subsequent cells 2 through 5 currently. But plans in the works. I still think there's another phase yet to happen. When that will happen, I'm not sure.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there, Councillor Maxwell?
Thanks, Steve. I was just wondering, I was walking around town today, and I'm wondering why we chose to do the outer sidewalk going around town in this budget year as compared to the inside one. Because the inside one is pretty bad, especially by Scotiabank. Like, and then over by Open Arms, that's still a problem.
The intention is, maybe I miscommunicated that, Counselor. The intention is to do the inner loop this year.
Okay.
Around, TD and Scotia side, down the other side of Scotia, down on Aberdeen. Certainly Cornwallis on the west side of Cornwallis Street.
Okay.
Probably the best section of that loop is on parts of Main Street, directly across the road from us, because that was repaired 2009, I
Yeah.
believe, in front of the old Rockwells, which is now Valley Stove and the pharmacy. But
Okay.
we're going to do the entire loop, or certainly as far as the first half of that funding takes us, and then next year would be the outer loop, is the intention. So
Okay, I thought it
maybe
was
I
I thought it
I
was
may
the
have confused
outside.
you. Yep.
So, okay, that's fantastic,
Yep.
because that is a bad section. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Are there any further questions for the director? All right, Dave, thank you very much.
Thank you.
CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So, shorter 2-week period for me. I was out for a couple of days. Community grants, just wanted to follow up with some discussion on that, in that submissions are in, budget is passed, so staff is ready to forward those to council. Recommend the council could receive these and begin the discussion as early as next week. So I leave that to council's direction. On the human resource side, of course, in the budget, there was a couple of positions were created, so those positions are going to be trickling out over the next little bit. And obviously, the intention is that these would be folks who would be placed in the summer months. Freedom of information, and this is something council probably is not that aware of, but we have received over the last number of months extensive number of requests. We do not have a freedom of administrator as a full-time position. So these requests, when they come in, our deputy clerk manages them. And as these volumes go up, sometimes we need to ask for extensions on them. So should the numbers remain high, we'll have to come back and have a conversation with council about potentially hiring a position to be resourcing these requests. On an internal basis, performance reviews. So this is the time of year after the budget passed that I sit with each of the directors. We come up with performance plans for the year, and then directors use those for performance plans with their staff. And then on the meeting side, Regional Sewer Committee, budget prep, and year-end financials. And that's just a quick overview of what's been happening.
Thank you very much, CAO. Are there any questions for the CAO? Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. Do any other municipalities or towns have policies where when FOIA requests come in, there's a charge to cover someone's time? Is that, not that I would ever want to deter anyone from doing it, but I think if we're contemplating maybe having to bring a new staff member in to do it.
So typically what happens is when you receive requests, there's about 2 hours worth of time in assessing the request, and doing the background on it is, for lack of a better word, free. After that, especially if the request is for a large volume of information, then there is a charge. Now, the individual is told up front the request, there's the number of records we anticipate, this would be the number of hours, and so this would be the cost to receive that information. And so that is actually almost every municipal unit's typical approach to this. It's our approach to this. Sometimes folks will streamline their request at that point and say, I'm really looking for, and it will kind of get narrowed down. But that's normal, the way that most would handle that kind of request, with a fee, should it be a really large or a larger piece that takes more than a couple hours worth of time.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the CAO? All right then, if there's no questions, we also have the Mentoring Plus report in the package. Did you wish to speak to that?
Just wanted council to be aware, so this is Q4 for Mentoring Plus. Of course, we had a presentation not that long ago with regards to Mentoring Plus, and typically what will happen is after, when we normally head into just the summer months, I'll have an opportunity to sit down with folks at Mentoring Plus and kind of get an update on what their annual plan is going to be like. So at that point, I'd bring any of that information back.
All right, thank you very much, CAO. So CAO, you mentioned that the grants are ready. We currently have on our books a special CAC meeting on the 15th of May. So could those be put out to council by Wednesday of this week so that we could meet on the 15th of May to review the grants with a recommendation to council on the May 30th meeting?
We can certainly get the individual grant applications up on the website for council to see. We'll put a matrix together and then send that out. So certainly Monday is doable.
Okay, perfect. So, council, we have a CAC meeting on Monday, May 15th. We've been holding these meetings earlier than typical.
4:30.
Do we want to do 4 o'clock or 4:30? Is that satisfactory? Councillor Zabian?
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with 4 o'clock, just we have Heritage meeting that we'd have to reschedule that again, which we could, I guess, if that'd be the second time, right?
Okay.
Could we do earlier than that, or is 4 kind of the earliest?
No, I think 4 is probably the
Okay.
earliest that we can do that, and with staff and everything, yeah. Can you reschedule
Yeah, we could.
them for
again, I
later?
guess. Yeah, we could again, guess.
If we're scheduled for an hour?
Yeah. Or the next Monday, the next would be no, yeah, we could do the next Monday maybe for Heritage.
No, next Monday's
Oh.
Victoria Day.
Victoria Day, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll figure that out after.
Okay, okay, very good then. So we'll go with May 15th at 4 PM. And that's a special CAC, and we'll be doing grants with a recommendation to council. So our staff reports have been presented and are now part of the meeting record. We move on now to our unfinished business, and it is with regards to the rezoning application. CAO, are you covering this, or is, oh, there she is. Kirsten, our development officer, will cover this one off for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Council, again, nice to see you. So we've been working diligently over the past few months, compiling some information for your consideration as it relates to the rezoning application for McDougall Heights. The town engaged C+D Community Design to provide an opinion on the content of the rezoning application. That analysis can be found within my report in Appendix B. We appreciate the effort put into the review from C+D Community Design. And if you have any questions for me around the contents of my report, I'm happy to answer them.
Excellent, thank you very much. Are there any questions for Kirsten on this matter? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. There was a lot to read going through there. C+D Planning had several, well, I think at least 3 recommendations that for council to consider. One was the water course, the Mitchell Brook water course, and adding some more green infrastructure as part of making sure that we're looking after the water in that area. And then that would be one, to extend the infrastructure outside of the regular development, I think was another one. So, for example, I think that they said, I guess it was in couple different places, that our facilities, recreational facilities should be within 2.5 kilometers for walking.
Mhm.
And I think that area would be beyond the 2.5 kilometer walking area. So
Yeah.
that is something that we would want to make sure that we have something there, whether it's a trail, whether it's a community park, whether it's, something that goes there. And so I'm just wondering, who is going to be responsible for making sure those things are done?
Absolutely. So some of the comments that were made by C+D Community Design, these things were brought up as consideration for the rezoning application, but these are things that we usually deal with at the subdivision phase. So when we receive a plan of subdivision for the area, we then calculate the 5% parkland dedication that's required for that, and then we determine what the need is for that community. Also, around the stormwater management of Mitchell Brook Watercourse, we have a section within our subdivision bylaw that talks about sediment and erosion control with development, with regard to development. So the developer would have to adhere to those standards as part of the subdivision bylaw process. So that will all be captured at that stage versus during the rezoning application. Some of these things can be quite significant and large documents, and sometimes the developer would like to move a little bit further beyond these, or within the stage to start these plans.
So I think they were suggesting that we would go beyond what is already in our subdivision documents.
Yeah.
And so I'm wondering, like, I'm thinking they're good suggestions. Maybe we can't enforce those suggestions because our subdivision documents don't go far enough. I don't know. But if I'm going to look at approving something, I would want more rather than less. So if I'm looking at this subdivision and saying, okay, I want to make sure that the people up there aren't going to have, flooding going on, what have we done in addition to our subdivision documents? Have we done anything in addition to that to solve this problem? And so, I'd like to be able to see something else done, like to take it a step further, which is what they're kind of saying that would be a good idea for us to do, which is take it a bit further than what we already have in our documents. So I'm wondering, like, can we do that? Does it require a change in our subdivision documents? If we need to change those documents, is that possible? Where do we go?
Yeah, I think that our subdivision bylaw talks to stormwater management, maybe exactly like you said, not to the full extent in which the recommendation is. However, our subdivision bylaw is a document that can be reopened and amended as needed. I think it's worthwhile to note that because of the age of our subdivision bylaw, it's from 2002. It is a good document, but there are obviously things that could be improved within it. And I think that it's those types of things that we should look to in the future as seeing what kind of mechanisms we can put in place to make it what we need it to be for Kentville.
But with this particular development, and I'm going to have to decide whether I'm going to approve a zoning change or not for this subdivision. I want to be really, really sure that the infrastructure for stormwater is, up to snuff and beyond. So can that happen is what I'm asking, or are we going to stick, to just what's in our documents, or can we require a little bit more from the developer to make sure like that we have more green structure elements and things like that put in, and so if I ask you when this comes up again, are they going to do this? I'm hoping that you would say, yes, they're going to add on, this and this. I don't know if you can answer that, my question.
How about if we let the CAO weigh in on this matter as well?
I don't know if you understand what I'm saying or not.
I do, and thank you, Councillor. So a couple of layers to respond to the question. First, there's a provincial requirement when you have the construction of a site to balance the water flows on the site. And so that's going to be a series of plans that the developer would submit to Director Bell, and he would be reviewing those plans. And so that's mandated by the Department of Environment. And so, in fact, if you will, it's a legislative requirement even beyond what a municipal unit is accountable for. I think second in the piece you're talking to is a real good segue to that secondary plan that we're talking about, kind of as we start talking about the hundreds and hundreds of acres that exist in Kentville right now that are in that R5 category. And are there things that we would want to see, like percentage of green space increased or land set aside for certain uses? That's a broader context. But even talking about things like making sure we set aside certain lands for retention ponds and whatnot that maybe have more of that green element or different elements to it. With regards to the application that's in front of us, the individual who is applying has our rules and has the provincial rules, and that's kind of what we have to base this on. But that all said, and you'll see in your package, there is a response there from Director Bell with regards to that concern, where you know, his role would be to be working with what the developer puts forward, and it has to satisfy him with regards to the stormwater management. Also, you know, as we start talking about the potential for a larger connector up there, we as a town will have to be doing our own work to make sure that we're dealing with stormwater. And so there may be even multiple pieces in the coming years that we can't even envision today will be opportunities to do things to divert water away from certain areas and towards retention or whatever that may be.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Zabian.
Thank you. Just a quick question or a comment, I guess. The subdivision bylaw amendment that we were looking at earlier with the sidewalks. So right now, if that wasn't changed, Acadia would need a sidewalk on each side, correct?
Actually, no, if that wasn't changed, Acadia would not require sidewalk at all.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I guess
so
I read that wrong.
That's a that would be classified as a connector or
Okay.
collector road, sorry. I always
Okay.
get those mixed up. And in 2008, that requirement for any sidewalks on a collector road was removed. So
Okay.
I'm suggesting to bring it back
Okay.
as a requirement, so that there would be at least one sidewalk
Gotcha,
on one side
okay.
of the road.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll direct this to you, Kirsten, but I don't know who's gonna answer it or if there is an answer. So when we put the roads in, much like when someone's building a building, is there an inspection? So we see the plans and we go, okay, the storm water's gonna run here and you know, this is gonna be the underground infrastructure. If it was a building, it would be, we're gonna inspect it this time. Does Dave, does somebody physically go out and go, not that, you know, you would wanna think anybody would do anything different, but you do it when in the building process. Do we do that? Is there someone that physically goes to the site?
Both happens. The designer's consultant has an on-site representative during construction. So when pipe's being laid, when roads are being built, they have sometimes a junior engineer, sometimes a technician on-site. And we require that as well. For us to take over the road, they have to sign off on it as the design engineer. So they inspect it full-time. We would inspect it periodically during construction. So, but we wouldn't take over a road that wasn't inspected and signed off by the designer, because they're the ones designing it and saying it's been built to our standards.
Now, on the off chance that it wasn't, is there recourse for us to go after the consultant? I'm speculating here, as you can imagine, but I'm just.
There is recourse. I don't, we haven't, I haven't witnessed that in the past. You know, I was on the other side for years, and we were the designers and the inspectors, and that's why they carry liability insurance. Yes, you can go after the designer after the fact and the builder, because they both would have to be insured, but certainly they're signing off on it as the professional that designed it and said it's been built to our standards. But yes, we would be there periodically too, but not the full time that their inspector would be.
Okay.
That answers your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. Mine's a bit more convoluted than the rest of the questions, I think. So when I look at the first letter that came from Caroline, and then when I look at the second letter that came from her, the first one talks about sort of the immediate, the intermediate, and the long term. which we delved into, and then the second one sort of goes a little bit further. She focuses more on the storm management piece. And then when I read, I'll call it the rebuttal, sort of, from Brighter Community Planning and Consulting, there doesn't seem to be the concerns, their responses, they don't seem to be as concerned as what Caroline is concerned about in her two post reports, I guess. One of the things that she mentions when she talks about intermediate response, and it kind of circles back to initially when I had said about development agreements, she talks about that is it their plan to build new homes on the lots or to sell them to others for development? What portion will the developer be developing himself? And that if that is the case, that if the developer intends to lease the land within the development, then we may be able to proceed with development agreements. So that's just sort of one piece, but there's so much to this, and I think she also talks about, in the long-term response, about recommending that the town consider updating their planning documents. And we talk about secondary plans, et cetera. But I think with this particular development, because of the complexity and the size of it, and there's so many different aspects to look at this, that it's difficult, I find it difficult to put it all together. And the stormwater piece, like, I understand that it's a provincial requirement and that you have to balance the flows, and I've said this in earlier meetings, we have a very different topography here in Kentville. I know that it can't be exceeding the 25%, and I know that on the maps, it's way over on the other side and just sporadically around where he's doing the development. But I think those are all really, really important pieces for us to understand as we move forward with this.
Yeah, of course. So I'd like to just provide a little bit of clarity on the comment around the land lease communities and the development agreement.
Okay.
So we do have a provision in our lot requirements for R5 zone that allow us to consider what we call land lease communities on R5 properties as they exist at this moment. And typically land lease communities are the property is owned by, it's similar to a condo, whereas the property is owned by an entity and then you own your home that's on top of it. So that is where there is allowances for development agreements for something like that. That's not what the developer has been proposing to this point. They've been proposing a mix of R1, R2, and then the apartment buildings. So that does not satisfy the allowance for development agreements for that proposed development. So I think that there was maybe just a little bit of miscommunication there on what was being asked of the rezoning application. When it comes to, I recognize and understand that there's a lot of information that's being pulled for this rezoning application, and sometimes that can be a bit, it's just a lot to wade through and try to put into perspective. I think that we've kind of gathered as much information as we can as what our MPS requires of us, and hope that maybe that's enough for council to make a decision on whether to proceed with first reading and then a public hearing in the process beyond that.
So Kirsten, the stormwater piece then, it seems to be an issue, and then it doesn't seem to be an issue, and then it does.
Yeah.
So I really need to get comfortable around that piece, and maybe we're not there yet, I don't know, but.
I'm just wondering if I can piggyback on this, if you don't mind.
My pleasure.
So I just want to remind CAC that you're in a process now with this application. And that process is that staff have brought you the application and for first reading, took it to council for first reading. Council said, we want some more information. Staff have gathered additional information and brought it back to you. Reported to you a couple of times, but I think the purpose of it being here now is to say to CAC, we think the application is complete. We're giving you all the information you've asked for to get it to first reading.
Right.
If CAC recommends to council, and ultimately if council says, okay, we're gonna have first reading, we then have a public hearing. At that public hearing, only councillors who are present will get to vote later, so it's very important to be present at that public hearing. You get to hear from the public and the developer about all outstanding issues. And of course, it's key to ensure that the public have as much information as possible, which is what staff have pulled together, so that the public can speak to you about it. I would suggest to you that the challenge, the particular challenge here, and you're seeing reports from both sides around the level of detail that may or may not be required. And that's because your municipal planning strategy allows for a granular level of detail to be requested from a developer that the developer can never be held to, which from a legal perspective is strange, from a developer's perspective is some of them would say a waste of money, and I dare say that this developer's planner has said, we don't want to go that far. You're asking us to spend thousands of dollars, perhaps tens of thousands of dollars, to do things that we may never do because we're too early in our process. But your municipal planning strategy allows it, and as a result, one planner has suggested trying to pull additional information out. And the developer has said, we don't want to go there yet. And like I say, from a legal perspective, totally understand that, because they're not going to be bound to it anyway. My recollection is, and I may be wrong, I haven't looked at the history of this, my recollection is that this came out of the last municipal planning strategy review, and that there was a feeling of council at the time that they wanted that level of detail. But it is challenging for any developer to commit to that level of expense at this stage. Ultimately, however, the evaluation of whether the policies in the municipal planning strategy, whether those policies have been satisfied by the developer, that falls to council. So if council gives first reading to the proposed amendments, goes to a public hearing, hears from the public, you've heard from the developer and the developer's planner, you've heard from your staff, you've heard from an outside planner, ultimately you get to decide, you get to weigh the pros and cons on the policy issues to decide those policy questions. And you won't have that full picture unless and until you go to a public hearing, I'd suggest. But you have to be satisfied that you're ready to go to a public hearing, and that's what first reading's for. So many of the questions you have still may get answered at that public hearing level. You may not have answers to every question that you would like to have an answer to, but that's where you ultimately make the policy decision about whether you have enough to be comfortable that the proposal satisfies the intent of the municipal planning strategy, and that's the test, whether it satisfies the intent of the municipal planning strategy. And reasonable people can disagree on whether the intent is satisfied. These are not always right and wrong answers, right? So you get to weigh the pros and cons on all of these issues, whether it's stormwater drainage or sidewalks or whatever the case may be. Now, we know that if a change happens to the subdivision bylaw, then in the new part of the subdivision, the developer will have to build a sidewalk on one side of the street. It will fall to council to build the sidewalk the rest of the way. But those are the sorts of things that are policy decisions on your part. Presumably, you don't want a sidewalk to nowhere, But those will be things that you will decide, right? So there will be budget implications to you. So all of those things will be teased out later, after you have the public hearing and and the public has had an opportunity to digest all of this information. So I would just encourage you at this stage to look at whether you have sufficient information to move forward to a public hearing, which isn't the same as saying you have all the answers. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Zabian.
Thank you, Mayor Snow. Mine's just a simple request of the CAO. Could you send us a copy of the original letter from C+D, just without the redactions in it? Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
All right, are there any further questions for Kirsten? So I will remind council on page 6 of that report, there is an error. And what has happened is that policy RS-22 has been copied when it should actually be policy RS-23. So that's on page 6 of the C&D report. And rather than read, council shall intend to encourage and promote, blah, 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 it should actually say, it shall be the intention of council to ensure that new residential areas, full colon, and then the 4 criteria. But you can get that, I'll send that out to you at the end of the meeting. The other thing you should note is that C&D is recommending that council approve the current application using all of the tools to address the current resident concerns. So we do have tools, and we are getting more tools with the amendments, and as the solicitor said, moving this process along is about keeping the process going. It's not about finalizing it at this point in time. So based on the recommendations that we have from staff and from the planner that we have hired, the recommendation is that CAC recommend first reading of the rezoning application to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. Do we have someone that move that? No, it's May 30th. We changed it at the last meeting? Yeah. Councillor Huntley, did I see your hand? Thank you. And do we have a seconder on this motion? Do we have a seconder on the motion to recommend first reading to council?
Can you read the motion?
So the motion is that CAC recommends first reading of the rezoning application to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. So council on May 30th will then, or has the opportunity at that point to approve first reading and move this into a public hearing phase for this application. Thank you. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends first reading of the rezoning application to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. Is there any further discussion on this matter? Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So if when it goes to first reading and then there is that public session, after the public session, we can ask for more information. If we don't feel we have enough information, how long do we have before it has to go to second reading?
I'm just parachuting in. Kirsten is right here on my elbow if I need her, and I'm here if she needs me. So you can ask for more information. You, depending on what information comes forward, it might go back for an additional public hearing. That's always a possibility. Because if you get new information that the public that you might want the public to be able to comment on before you make a decision, then it's quite appropriate to go back to the public. It doesn't always require you to go back to the public. But if it was substantive, then I would be standing here recommending that you take it back to the public. So sometimes you go back to the public after getting new information, but if it's just clarification, then typically you don't go back to the public. You get that clarification, and then it comes back to council. I should add that from a timing perspective, I anticipate that you will not have second reading until after you have had second reading on the subdivision bylaw amendment. I thought I'd better put that on the record. Just so from a timing perspective, be careful of that, because I think that may be an important part of your consideration on the land use bylaw amendment.
And further, and also, from the time that we have been in receipt of this information, which I understood was February, but then from some of these reports, it seems that it was earlier, maybe even September. No.
No, I think it's later, but
Yeah.
Christian can confirm.
So we received the first application in September.
In September.
However, it was not deemed to be a completed application until the February date.
Until February. So that's when the clock starts, in February, right? So that's our 120 days where we are required to have that first reading.
No, sorry.
Go ahead, CA.
It's actually at that date, then you have to have your public participation meeting within 120 days. So what we're doing here today is with the first reading is being able to move this for council to consider going to that. But that is not a requirement where you have to do anything other than that within that 120-day window.
I'd like to just give a point of clarification. Sorry, CAO Truck, it's the public hearing. not
Public hearing, I said public participation.
Okay. So I think it's important to have that public participation meeting, hearing.
Public hearing.
Hearing,
Yes,
sorry.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
My bad.
I'll get the verbiage right. Okay. I think it's important to have that for the citizens to speak on the issue, so.
Yep.
I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
All right,
for the
is there any further discussion on this matter? Are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends first reading of the rezoning application to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed. And the motion is carried. Thank you. All right, we have no correspondence, which brings us to our new business this evening. And our first item is the NECAC prom event appeal. And CAO, if you could take us through the details of this matter.
Thank you very much, Mayor Snow. So, council, we put together a little bit of just a backgrounder on process, included the public event permit application, but just wanted to take a minute to talk about where we are. So,
okay, if we could take a recess for 5 minutes, please, and return. All right, thank you very much. Our recess is over, and back to you, CAO, with regards to the appeal.
Thanks so much. So, just again, council, in your package, so you have the request, which was made, so the public event permit application form is attached. Also, what we've done is kind of laid out here for council, kind of the process that we would go through, so that council is aware. Appreciate that part of what happens when an application comes in, we first look at, is it a public event? And then the process of obtaining a public event permit includes the submission of the completed application, which you see in the package. And that is reviewed by all departments, most notably our traffic authority, police department, and then the other department heads. If at that point in time there is further discussion is needed or further elements, or should a group come back with additional comments, then essentially it normally comes forward at a larger meeting. So it could be like senior advisory committee, or there could be a larger discussion happens amongst staff to look at the request. So what was requested? We had a closure of Webster Street from 6 to 8 for a red carpet walk, community celebration gathering in Center Square. What was encouraged was full access to Center Square for both red carpet walk and community celebration portion of the planned event. Coordinated early closure of Center Square for setup, late access for tear down. Staff assistance with setup and tear down as available, and use of TOK owned decor assets and pre-ordering of additional theme and color specific lighting. How this was communicated. So you had initial emails received by staff from various parent group representatives requesting the road closure. Staff return emails asking for details and encouraging the use of Center Square. Again, what staff will normally do will say, can this event occur without closing the street? If the answer is yes, then that is what we pursue. And what you would hear if you were talking to the police or to the traffic authority is that Center Square, from a safety perspective, is always safer because it is not a roadway, that it's easier to contain and to be able to deal with the safety of individuals in that center versus if you have a road and you're using barricades and whatnot, that sometimes it is something that creates greater liability, for lack of a better word. So follow-up emails from school administration and so on. Follow-up planning with the student prom committee chair, road closures were discussed. Additional emails were received from parent contact requesting road closures. A parent group meeting including student prom committee chair. Center Square was encouraged by staff and supported by the student chair. An alternative option discussed with the parent group was not successful. Parent group requested an application to make the road closure request. And essentially, as you heard in the presentation today, that was, while I was away, that was communicated by Director Bedingfield, certainly supported. That was my recommendation as well. And an appeal process was initiated with an email coming to me last week where I reiterated the information as was sent by staff and supporting the position of staff with the road closure. Some points for consideration. So it has very much been the standard practice since March of 22, and that again, that's the lifting of the emergency, the state of emergency. Staff encourage all groups to use the free pavilion in lieu of hosting on-street activities. The closure on Webster on June 10th would be 4 weekend closures downtown in a 30-day period. There's a significant amount of sidewalk work scheduled this year, so there's going to be closures this year as well, mainly from a work perspective. I think what I would probably suggest at this point in time, and I think you may have the document here, just so that folks are aware of what would have been proposed. Kirsten put together just an overview of the event. So there would be a gathering of students in the parking lot next to Lawton's there. They would walk in front of Lawton's and then be able to proceed down through the alley.
Please stand by.
That's okay. So proceed down through the alley where they would be able to walk under the overhang, have pictures taken. There are going to be portable stands would be placed so that family, friends, whatnot could sit and watch the walk, be able to take pictures, and then the students would walk through and be able to go to a gathering area for the community celebration. So, and this is Kirsten's great IT work threw this together for me.
So where would they all congregate? May I, I'm so sorry.
Just one more second. Okay. So you can see the temporary bleachers would be set up, students would walk through, and then coming through, you've got that large area there where you've got picnic tables, lights and whatnot have been set up. So in essence, that would be the area where the entire event would start and take place. Just wanted to talk quickly about any events that happen on a weekend. That any event that an event happens on the weekend, and we do staff call out, so we have a collective agreement where we would have a call out requirement, and so we would assume that we would be somewhere in the 9-hour range because you get paid time and a half for being a call out, and there's a minimum call out, as well as Kentfield Police on the weekend would also have a requirement to have some additional staffing. So in ballpark, we would see this as a potential cost of about $1,000. The other piece that we would have to coordinate would also be with King's Transit, EHS, and Fire Services, letting them know that there is a potential, or there is a road closure. So where we do not pass along any of the costs, it would be coordinated by the town, and those costs would be absorbed by the town. Again, this is the process that we follow with any group that would come through. And typically we would look at this from a perspective that if the event can be put together and carried off successfully without closing a street, that is what we ask the groups to pursue. And the recommendation that you saw from staff was that it is our belief that the requirement for the street closure was not there.
Thank you, CAO. So council, we have had a request that has been presented to council by a group of parents to permit the closure of Webster Street to support the NECEC graduating class. Staff has provided the details of its decision-making process. Council has two options: support the staff recommendation, in which case no further action is required, or support the request to close the Webster Street for the NECEC graduating class, for which a motion is required. So a motion would read that CAC recommends approval of the closure of Webster Street to support the NECEC graduating class promenade to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. Do I have someone that would move that? Councillor,
But can we make an amendment to that?
just let me take, so I've got Councillor Gerard as making the motion and you're making the second. All right. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends approval of closure of Webster Street to support the NECEC graduating class promenade to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. Councillor Zabian, you had something you wanted to add, subtract?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Snow. This seems like a no-brainer to me, and the only problem with this, we're at CAC tonight, and this wouldn't get ratified until the 30th of May, correct?
That's correct.
So could we could I make a suggestion that we have a special meeting the end of this week? It could be on Zoom, just so we could vote on this matter so that these people can plan ahead, rather than wait until the 30th of May. They only have a 10-day window.
Okay, but
Yeah.
what you're asking for is not with regards.
Well, that's why I said, can we amend that motion?
The motion doesn't, the motion.
What, I don't expect these people to wait until the 30th of May before we ratify a decision. That's, yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
What I'm trying to say to you is that what you're asking for doesn't belong in this motion.
Okay.
So this motion has to go forward.
Okay.
Or should go forward.
Okay.
And then based on the outcome, then.
Could make another one.
Exactly.
Okay, all right.
Exactly.
Thank you.
And as Kathy Maxwell, or Councillor Maxwell has just pointed out, council can hold a special meeting, call to order a special meeting at the
Okay.
end of this.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just going to remind council that there is a special meeting following CAC
okay.
this evening. There's a special meeting of council following the CAC this evening.
There is?
There is? Okay. All right. Well, a special meeting only has one matter, so this matter can't go on that agenda if it's already been set.
If I could.
Since we don't know about it, then.
Yeah.
So, if I could, so motion gets voted on.
Yep.
The other piece I would suggest is that if we're getting together for a grants CAC meeting, you may choose after that to hold a special meeting if one is warranted. So you could have a special meeting next week if one was needed.
Oh, I think I pushed in.
Okay, you're off.
Now, push it again if I want to go on, or somebody else ahead of me?
Okay, yes, we're having discussion now.
Okay.
So that had nothing to do
No,
with this.
no.
So that was a freebie.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Worship. So, I mean, to the CEO's point, if we're having our meeting next,
No.
I know what you're saying.
Please.
it's not germane to the motion.
It's
Let's
not.
continue with the motion.
Yes,
I
please.
withdraw.
Please,
Go
thank
ahead.
you. Okay, Councillor Zabian,
Thank you.
to the motion.
Thank you, yes. Just have a couple of comments. The first thing, when I look at this, is it's on a Saturday. And I mean, for someone who's on that street, if there was 8 days in a week, I'd be there 8 days. If that street, after 5 o'clock, there's nobody there. And all those businesses, I don't know how far that you want to close the street, whether it's just from Cornwallis to Aberdeen. I don't know if that was decided or it was going to go down further, I'm not sure. But between Cornwallis and Aberdeen, everybody's closed at 5. Tim Hortons isn't there anymore. There's nothing open there that's going to cause disruption. When I look at this, I mean, these are our students. This is for our community. I understand and I appreciate the staff and what they've put forward, but I mean, this seems like a very easy thing to accommodate. When we close the downtown, or we close Webster for 2 days for the motorcycle rally, which I think we end up paying money to be part of that too. This is very minimal, and I mean, it's for our students. So I have a problem not supporting this, and I look at Woofle, and I've gone to theirs before, and they have one strip. We have blocks. So if you can't go on Webster, they're gonna use Main, or they're gonna find an alternate way around. Woofle has that one strip, and they close it down, and I spoke with Mayor Donovan, and if you wanna see a happy town, she invited me to Woofle for that particular night. And the other question is, when I hear the costs of $1,000 or $900, what did we pay in the last time we did this 2 years ago? I was there, I know Mayor Snow was. I thought it was great, people came out. And I look at, in Center Square, they have those my brain's not working tonight, to sit on the bleachers. Do we have those in town, or is that a rental? Or we didn't have bleachers last time. They had DJ there, they had some music, and the kids were on flying. It was just a nice thing. People came from all over, not just people from in town. People came from all over to watch that, and I just don't know why we'd pass up on that opportunity to host that again. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor has told me before that I don't mince words, and anybody who knows me knows that that's true. I don't mince words, and I don't intend to do it now. This was the most disappointing report that I've ever read. This
Councillor,
should be
before, Councillor, please.
Yes.
I know that you don't mince words,
Yep.
but I also want you to be respectful of staff and their work, and the
I'm
disappointment is yours.
That's
And-
right.
And you have to
I'm
take.
speaking.
Okay, you
And
have to
it's
take
mine.
ownership of that.
I did, right
And
at the
not
beginning.
transfer it, please. I'm asking you.
I did, right at the beginning, I said, I'm not going to mince words, these are my words. I was disappointed in reading this report. This is an opportunity for the town of Kentville to build community, to build a sense of community, which we lack in this town and have ever since I was a little girl in grade primary walking up the hill to go to school. It's a chance to build some community spirit. It's a chance to build community pride. This is 2023. I graduated from the school at the top of the hill, which was a town school that went from primary to grade 12 in 1973. This is our 50-year reunion this summer, my graduating class. And events are being planned now to host that here in Kentville. And the reason it's being hosted here in Kentville is because the people that I went to school with at that time had a sense of community and a sense of pride in their community. And those that are away want to come back. And we see that even with the Apple Blossom Festival. People who are away want to come back. And those events are being held at different locations in town. Miners Marsh is one of them, Maritime Cider Express, Patty's Pub. People are coming for this reunion. To think that these students aren't going to take away some sort of sense of community or lack of community based on our decision, I think would be being pretty naive. We need to embrace the youth of this town. We don't just look at the children in elementary school. They get lots of attention. It's when they leave that school down on Park Street and head out to Nekek that they lose every sense of community and attachment to community. I know what it's like to teach in a rural school that has no community. And it's not easy, and it's not fun for the students. When I went to KCA, the rink was full for a high school hockey game. Not just parents of the people playing, but everybody in town. A lot of people came to watch those games. Same with basketball. Same with the other events going on at the school. When we lost our high school and our middle school from Kentville, we lost our sense of community. And we have never really regained that back. And what I've heard over and over again is the town never supports the students. The town never does anything for students. And what they mean by students is our teenagers. We don't see them here. We don't see them on our streets. We might see them occasionally at the parks in the summer, but they're losing a sense of community and they're losing a sense of attachment. And they've come to us to say, please be our community. We want to be like every other school around us. We want to be like Horton. We want to be like West Kings. We want to be like Central Kings. We want to have our prom parade, just like every other school. All these reasons that have been given here, those can all be fixed very quickly. The only one that stands out to me is that we've invested significant capital over the last 6 years into the activation of Center Square. True, we've done a fantastic job. Lindsay and her crew have done a fantastic job. It's a beautiful location. It's not what the students want. This is not about us. We're not putting on our dresses and our tuxes and going out to this event. This is about the students, the youth of our town. It's not about us. If they want Center Square, give them Center Square. If they want a parade down Webster Street, let's give them a parade down Webster Street. Let's show them that this town does support the youth, whether they're going to school in Kentville or whether the school unfortunately had to be moved to Cannon. They're still a part of this town. And I think that we need to support them. We passed a $15 million budget, capital budget. We've never spent the entire capital budget. I'm sure that we can scrape up $1,000 to look after this group. And so I will support this request. Thank you.
Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Worship. It's very hard to follow, Councillor Maxwell. I just wanted to say a couple of things. I wanted to first and foremost say that I appreciate the work that staff puts into this, and I appreciate, that they have to take safety into account, et cetera. And there's a lot of aspects that they have to consider. I think it's, I take what Ms. Boutlier said when she said about pausing and celebrating the kids, and I think that's important. I can understand Center Square and sort of kind of the rationale around that, and hopefully, if it moves forward, we'll use both the street and we'll use Center Square as well. These are always difficult things when you're measuring staff recommendations against what council wants and what the public wants. So that's all I wanted to say.
All right, thank you very much. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to say? Councillor Huntley.
Sure. I think a lot of what I'm going to say has been repeated already. First of all, I would like to thank, this was a great report that was given to us. There's lots of options. There were stats on safety. The sidewalk work was mentioned. Coordinating with other agencies can always be a challenge. So I want to thank you for the team here at town for doing this. The one thing that I guess I do want to say is $1,000 is not a lot. And if there's one thing I can say, that I do love the kids here in Kentville. I don't know many of them and I don't have children of my own, but I work hard every day to do stuff for all the schools that are in this area. So I just want to say thank you to the parents and the school for the care that you have for the kids that you have. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anything further? All right, well, I'm going to say that I have thought about this since I got the first email. And I'm also going to say that due to safety and having as many street closures, that I was really not prepared to support this. And I realize that, we've had several things thrown around tonight from democracy, and I guess democracy is about being able to come and put your words out and make the appeal. And I think that what we have demonstrated is that we do have processes that we're not afraid to follow. And I'm also going to say that listening to my council colleagues and listening to the parents this evening and watching the number of students that came in here and said that something matters, and I think that's what really hits home. And one of the things is that council and the town did bend over backwards through COVID to make things special, because we knew how awful it was for our students. We knew how awful it was for everybody, but particularly our students, and we spent a crap load of money to make those 2 years be very, very special for the students. And we also started something. We started something that was copied in Berwick, something that is copied in Wolfville. And I'm going to say that people seem to be spending a lot of time copying what Kentville does. And I think that we had an idea that is very good. I'm going to say that I believe that in your permit application that you underestimated how long it takes to set something up, so that the first foot that touches that red carpet happens at 6 p.m. I would say that you're probably 2 hours before that 6 p.m. to get things set up. And then you're going to be herding cats out of Miners Marsh and across a busy street that is not closed onto a closed street. So I think that there's some logistics that still has to be worked out. But I just want to say thank you, members of council, for expressing what you had to express to the parents. Thank you for coming and expressing to the students. Thank you for showing that this wasn't all just your parents' idea, and that you were here to let us know. And thank you. So if there's nothing further, we will move the question. That CAC recommends approval of the closure of Webster Street to support the NECEC graduating class promenade to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. And we do have a council meeting scheduled for May the 15th. So if we were to arrive 15 minutes before that time, we could have a special council meeting to move this recommendation to council if that is satisfactory to the members. Good? All right, thank you. All right, our next piece of business is the Lions Club lease renewal. CAO?
Thank you, Mayor Snow. So we have the expiration of the Lions Club lease is upon us. So the relationship with the town of Kentville in this particular lease is that in circa 2009, the Lions Club was running programs and events at a town-owned building on 78 River Street. The lease governing the use of the property is up for renewal, and attached to the document here tonight is that lease. So just from a perspective, this is a little bit of a different lease than what folks may normally see, so I wanted to quickly go through an overview. The monthly rent, it's $1 a month. However, the agreement allows for what's called additional rent. So the amount of additional rent is calculated annually based on the property taxes that would have been collected and the town's cost to insure the property. So in 2022-23, that amount was $6,375, and in 23-24, that was $6,417. In addition, the Lions are billed directly for their utilities and power, and we don't have any sense on what that is at this time because the town is not involved in the payment of that. Also, all repairs and maintenance of the building is at the cost of the Lions Club. So in essence, the town allows for a use of one of their buildings where the individual leasing it pays for all repairs, pays the property taxes, pays the insurance, pays the heats and lights, and then pays the town $1 per month for the privilege of leasing the building. So certainly it is the recommendation of staff to move that forward. In addition, I just want staff to be, our council to be aware, we do have other buildings that this is not the format in which we follow. And so I did make a note here that 66 Station Lane is a $1,500 per year lease where the town actually pays all the costs associated with that building. So while that doesn't have anything specifically to do with tonight's conversation, I just wanted that to be on top of mind for council. So the lease essentially remains the same and is the recommendation of staff to move ahead with the same provisions that exist, with the Director of Finance calculating an annual payment based on insurance, on property taxation, and the continued maintenance and any costs associated with building repair remaining with the Lions Club.
Thank you very much for that, CAO. And with that staff recommendation, the motion would be that CAC recommends approval of the lease renewal with the Kentville Lions Club to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. Is there someone prepared to move that motion? Councillor Zabian, thank you. Deputy Mayor, thank you for the second. It has been moved and seconded that CAC recommends approval of the lease renewal with the Kentville Lions Club to council at the May 30th, 2023 council meeting. Is there any discussion on this matter? Councillor Maxwell.
Thank you. I just wanted to where CAO pointed out the difference between the Via Station rental and this one, I just want to say that sometimes we can't compare apples and oranges. The Lions Club is a community group whose focus is fundraising. That's what they do. They raise money. All their events are to raise money to give back into the community. That's the purpose of the Lions Club. And whereas the Heritage Society or Historical Society, their purpose is to preserve the history of the town and provide a spot of information. And so their focus is not on fundraising except to meet the bills that they have. And so I think that we have to, keep that in mind as well. We can't compare these two entities because these two entities are completely different. Their purposes are completely different. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gerard.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to say, again, I think I've mentioned this in the first 4 years because these leases keep coming up. I'd love to see a day where the town isn't a landlord, where, these organizations take the buildings over, because I don't like giving privilege to certain groups, certain organizations. I think it should be standard right across the board. I brought this up before, and I just think the town shouldn't be a landlord. Thank you.
Thank you. CAO Trope, a number of years ago, staff put together a report with regards to, I'll say, there was market value of the different buildings, and there was what we could collect in taxes, and potentially if we want to rent it. But if we got out of the property owning business, is there a way that we could look at what the assets are and currently kind of what we're spending on them and come back for some decision making?
Sure. So, Mayor, yes, there's an inventory that was done some time ago with the buildings. I would suspect the valuations may be off if it's even just a few years old. I believe the other piece is that as a municipal unit, selling a property, there is a requirement to get market value. I don't believe we have the flexibility of selling below market. But we could certainly take a look at that. First, we'll circulate the document that was there. It's a few years old, but happy to circulate that to council. And then we certainly could take a look at updating that as we have the capacity to do so.
Okay. I believe there's an MGA change, so that's the Municipal Government Act change coming that's going to permit us to sell below market value to not-for-profits.
That is a potential, yes.
So we may see that.
Yep.
All right, Council, are you ready for the question? The question is that CAC recommends approval of the lease renewal with the Kentville Lions Club to Council at the May 30th, 2023 Council meeting. Voting is now open. Voting is now closed, and the motion is carried. Thank you very much. All right, that concludes all of our business this evening. Just as a reminder, council meeting at the end of the month will be May 30th. So that's actually on the Tuesday evening as approved at our April council meeting. The mic is now open for members of the public to make public comment, to speak to council on agenda items. You will be provided with 3 minutes to speak. Disrespectful or comments on personnel will not be permitted, and we ask that you please provide your name and address prior to speaking.
Good evening. My name is Marcia McNeil. I'm at 23 Acadia in Kempville. Not sure if you guys actually really listened to Kathy Boutlier's moving speech tonight, but I certainly did. And I cannot believe that this town would decline a prom parade or try to, say, have it in Center Square when they want to walk down the street. You don't see the town of Wolfville saying to the Horton people, first of all, the town of Wolfville is welcoming these kids with open arms and doing everything they can for them. And you don't see the town of Wolfville making these kids go on Front Street and get in the back street and have a little parade and whatever. They are marched right down the main street. The people come out. And not only that, did you ever think that maybe that these parents, after the prom parade and stuff, are gonna go to our businesses like Patty's Pub, King's Arms Pub, and the other pubs and eat and create business? It's like Kathy said, the sense of community. You guys are all about, oh, shop local, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's an opportunity right there to have all these parents go to the local pubs and spend money after their kids have graduated, because it's a happy night, everybody's happy, and the kids deserve that. I wish the kids were still here tonight because, you know, kudos to them for even coming tonight. You're cutting off your hand to spite your face, because the thing is, you got all these parents sitting here, living in Kentville, that are the taxpayers paying your salary. And yet you couldn't do them a favor by letting them have a prom parade to come down Main Street. I would stand there and welcome them with open arms and be the first one there clapping. Like, what is wrong? Like, every time the citizens make a nice suggestion, oh, there's a great big brick wall they gotta climb over to get anything done. It is ridiculous. Anyway, and then the worst part of it all, you're gonna make this group who are trying to organize what could be the biggest event in some of these kids' lives, wait until you have another meeting about it? You can make a decision tonight. There's nobody holding you back. You can make an amendment or something. I'm sure Jeff could, say that you can make some kind of amendment. They have to make plans. They've got stuff to do. Now you're going to make them wait until, what was it, May the 15th? And this parade is supposed to happen on June 10th? Like, get with the times. Make a decision and get on with it. Like, you have to have meeting after meeting after meeting. Like, come on, you guys. Open these people with open arms. These kids here are going to remember that the town of Kentville did nothing for them on their prom.
Thank
What?
you. Your 3 minutes is done.
Anyway, I think I got my point across, and it's shameful to think that you would do something like that.
All right. Council has in camera, and we require a motion to go in camera.
Jennifer Curry from Acadia Drive. I wasn't planning on speaking tonight, but the NECAC thing I wanted to mention. If you mentioned that the cost of overtime for your police will be expensive for this, if you're going to have close to 1,000 people in Center Square, you can't have 2 to 3 Kentville police officers working who are doing Center Square with 1,000 people plus doing their regular calls. So you're going to need overtime regardless whether you shut down this small portion of the road or not. And I think that has to be noted. Also, as somebody who is not involved in this at all, but potentially driving through downtown, I would much prefer to have that section blocked off and have a small detour instead of driving into a road with people walking all over the place. And because when you have 1,000 people, people walk in the road. That's just what happens. So I just think that should be taken into consideration, that the cost to shut down the road isn't the reason. The high cost to me isn't shutting down the road, but the high cost is the security, and you're going to pay that anyway, whether you shut it down or not. So.
Thank you.
I promise I'll be really quick. I'm Donna Conrad, and my office is on Webster Court, and I live in Berwick, and I really like all of you, and I think you're doing a good job in a challenging position. These folks I came to support as a business person because I'm going to take some time off work. My staff are too. Quite a few of our stocking volunteers to roll our sleeves up and do whatever we have to do. Believe me, I don't know what that is, and I don't know anything about road closures. But these folks, when I look at them, all of those parents sitting there have supported the stocking project. They've come and they've given me hours and days of support before Christmas, when they definitely didn't have time. So I had to make time for them, and I know a few other businesses will too. And I know that this is a tough decision, and I know you'll make a good one. And on a positive note, there's a ton of love in this room for Kemptville. I can see that in everyone's faces. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'll keep mine short as well. Megan Sabian. Wasn't planning on speaking tonight either, but inspired by everybody that came out tonight. And again, I really don't think I need to add to it, but I just want to vouch for my support of the NECAC grads. I have children, but we're years away from that. But I do want to recognize the importance of supporting that local community. And one thing I will say that I'm thankful that this rezoning process has actually brought me into the folds of these municipal politics, because I'm learning a ton. It's really great. It's opening my eyes. I do work in policy, but it's like way up here. It's healthcare policy. It's pan-Canadian, and this is bringing me more down to my local grassroots community that is new to me. I've only moved here in 2019, so I'm really thankful for that. But one thing I recognize in what I do in my day-to-day job in healthcare policy is a lot of the times our policies guide us, yes, but sometimes, and this is where patient voice comes in, for example, we have to look at the people side of things, people strategies, right? So yes, guiding policy, it's there for a reason, but we also do need to consider the people side of things. And I think hearing some of those comments tonight, and like you're hearing with the rezoning application, there's a lot of that people stuff that comes into the fold as well, guided by your policies. I'll just leave those reflections. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. We have business that must be conducted in camera, therefore we need a motion to move into camera. Thank you. And Councillor Huntley for the second. So it has been moved and seconded that council move into camera. All those in favor? Those opposed, the motion is carried, and the time is 8:55. Thank you very much.